and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well done. Thank you. Let's do the roll call, please.
Mr. Conover?
Here.
Mr. Leggett?
Here.
Mr. Diamond?
Here.
Mr. McDevitt?
Here.
Ms. Bramer?
Present.
Mr. Bruno?
Here.
Mr. Driscoll?
Here.
Mrs. Frazier?
Here.
Mr. Simpson?
Here.
Ms. Hogan?
Here.
Mr. Dickinson? Mr. Merlino?
Here.
Mr. Stroud?
Here.
Mr. Weil?
Here.
Mr. McGowan?
Here.
Ms. Seaver?
Here.
Mr. Beatty?
Here.
Ms. Scheffler?
Here.
Mr. Garrity?
Here.
Chairman Thomas?
Here. At this time, Congresswoman Stefanik would like to give us a call and speak to us, and I was wondering if she's with us.
I am on the call. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, we can. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you so much for the opportunity to update Warren County. I've been participating in these calls on coronavirus task forces with counties across the district. But I just want to thank all of you and the county public health officials and county staff for all the hard work over the past few weeks and in anticipation of the weeks that lie ahead. I thought today I would give a brief update as to what my office has been focused on and getting information out to the public, resources that are available, and then I'm happy to open it up for questions. So number one, my office has been working tirelessly to get out as much information possible across the district to continue to encourage all constituents to follow CDC guidance as well as the guidance from county public health officials who have been doing a tremendous job informing the public. In addition, we have been in contact with the hospitals across the district, tracking their test supply needs, their personal protective equipment, medical supply needs, and working at the state level for when our numbers are low, getting those testing supplies as quickly as possible. We were able to deliver that to one of the counties in the district yesterday. I'm working on another county that has a very low test supply number, so please keep me posted directly on it as I'm able to get that delivered directly from the state into this district. Additionally, I have been in touch with all the county offices of the aging as they have continued to adjust to make sure that our seniors are getting these food deliveries, given that many of the sites where they pick up the food, we are no longer doing those. We are doing these door-to-door deliveries. I've also been in touch with the superintendents across the district and participated in many of those conference and planning meetings to make sure that the school meals program are fully funded, and I just am amazed and inspired by everyone in the community stepping up, the bus drivers and volunteers going above and beyond to make sure our students are fed. We've passed 2 phases of legislation. This is going to be very fast moving. In Washington, the first phase was $8.3 billion of funding to fund the immediate research and development of a coronavirus vaccination. Additionally, increased funding for our broader healthcare investments across the country and testing capabilities. Number 2, which we passed last week, Friday, midnight, between Friday and Saturday, was a package that includes increased funding for counties regarding Medicaid. It was a 6.2% increase of FMAP, which I know is critical to the county budgets as you are bearing the brunt of this and the increased costs that are at stake given this public health crisis. In addition, we passed the legislation that was included that requires testing to be free, whether you are on private insurance, Medicare, Medicaid, or uninsured. So no one in this country should be charged for any testing. We are currently in negotiations right now for an immediate additional legislative package to put money in the pockets of hardworking Americans who are in economic dire distress right now. That will likely be passed on Monday. In addition, small business relief, which needs to be sent immediately, particularly in communities like ours where there are so many hospitality, mom and pop hotels, motels, tourist industry, restaurants that are just getting crushed after a lifetime of work building up these businesses, facing very uncertain times. The SBA has announced New York is eligible for these very low interest loans. That's currently available through my office. We're working with all of the chambers to get that information out there. I did a conference call and updated many businesses with the Adirondack Regional Chamber of Commerce yesterday. I'm doing one with the Lake George Chamber next week. Nonprofits are also eligible for those SBA loans. And there's this next package that we pass in Congress likely on Monday or Tuesday is likely to include immediate relief for small businesses that the loan will be forgiven if it's used for payroll, mortgage, or additional expenses during this crisis. So we're working incredibly hard. I've spoken to hundreds of constituent businesses over the past few days, 24/7, but my office is here to work for you. With that, I will turn it back over to you. Thank you again for all the great work, and I'd love to answer questions.
Thank you. Does anyone have a question? Yes, Supervisor.
Thank you so much, Chairman. Thank you, Congresswoman Stefanik, for being on the phone with us today. I really appreciate your offer to help us get more testing kits. I just read in the Post-Star this morning that Glens Falls has not discontinued testing, but they are running very low on supplies. So I think that would be something that would be much needed for our community hospital here. Thank you.
Yes, what is the most up-to-date number of the county? If you are more comfortable telling me that privately, please have someone text that to me. I will immediately get in touch with the head of New York State Emergency Services to get those test numbers. If you don't have it, I will follow up with Diane Shaboo directly.
Congresswoman, our Health Services Director is here, and she'll follow up on that request.
Great, I will take care of that today.
Thank you.
Questions? I don't see any other questions. I would like to say thank you for taking the time to join us. Also, thank you for the increased FMAP money that we will definitely need that in the near future. If there's nothing else, you're more than welcome to stay and listen in on our meeting, but I'm sure you have better things to do.
I appreciate everybody. Again, don't hesitate to reach out to me. I know there's going to be an influx of questions from Warren County residents and small businesses, particularly as we get the word out of these relief programs. Just don't hesitate to reach out to my office because we are working with businesses on an individual basis so that they can understand what they qualify for. Thank you very much, and I'll follow up on the test kits. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you,
Elise. Thank you.
Take care.
Thanks, Elise.
Next, we need a motion to approve the minutes of the February 21st, 2024 meeting, subject to correction of the clerk. Moved by Supervisor Simpson, seconded by Supervisor Stroud. Call the question. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried. The next item on the, we're not going to have the employee of the month presentation this month. Hopefully, we'll do that next month. Next is the report of Chairman of the Board. Well, on a positive note, happy first day of spring. Beyond that, we're in uncharted territory, no doubt about it, but it's truly an unprecedented time. I would ask that we all stay together, work together, support each other, and we will get through this, and we will overcome this health crisis and the economic crisis that's bound to follow. The more we do now to stop the spread of COVID-19, the sooner we'll live. Please remain calm. Observe social distancing. Wash your hands. If you feel sick, stay home. and remain at home as much as possible. I can't say enough about our department heads, our county administrator's office, our employees. Thank you to all of them. They do whatever's asked. They do what's required. And when asked or required, they get to work and get it done. A special thank you to the task force. I know Health Services has been working for 3 weeks or more on this and working 7 days a week. The sheriff's office, again, the administrator's office and the attorney's office, OES, the DSS department, and the commissioner, and OFA. We've met many times as this has evolved. They are all professional and doing an excellent job. And I would say thank you to their leadership. We need to remember this is very stressful for everyone. People are tired, they're nervous, they're worried. And please keep that in mind going forward when you interact with our department heads, our employees, or anyone for that matter. I would also like to thank the general public, our residents, for their cooperation and their compliance for what's been asked. This has all happened very quickly. Governor Cuomo, I believe, has issued 7 executive orders to date. I would like to thank Governor Cuomo. I think he's doing an excellent job. It's got to be very difficult. On Monday, 3/16, about 2 p.m., I declared a state of emergency for Warren County. And as we were ordered, we reduced all non-essential personnel by 50%. Many are working from home, and all are being paid. We spent most of that day deciphering who's essential and who's not essential with the assistance of our department. Yesterday at 4 p.m., I issued an emergency order to close our buildings to the public. It was not my desire. I didn't want to, but I felt, and our public health director and the people around me felt that for the safety of everyone, our employees, and for the public themselves, that it was best. Many departments are still working. If someone calls the county for assistance or questions, someone will be there to answer the phone. We could probably do some sort of an appointment situation with some areas. There's a list of phone numbers and emails at each door for each department. What seems like another time, a week and a half ago, I attended the committee meetings, also attended some committee meetings the other day. I've been on many conference calls and updates with the governor's office, clarification on executive orders and issues. I've met with our task force many times, probably 4 or 5 times in the past week to 2 weeks. I was on a conference call, myself, Administrator Moore, and Mr. Garrett, or Supervisor Garrity, with the school superintendents. We discussed each other's needs, how we can help each other, discuss that in the future, that we would like to have a couple of roundtables with representatives from everyone involved, and meet a couple times a year just to familiarize ourselves with our operations and what everybody does. I thought that was an excellent idea. All the school districts are providing meals to their students. Online instructions is also being carried out. So through a difficult time, they are persevering. NISAC has had conference calls each evening at 7 o'clock. They last about an hour and a half for all counties. Their website has a huge amount of information available. I would recommend that everybody, if you haven't been to it, to visit it. They're going to continue these conference calls for the foreseeable future each evening. And some of the issues that's come out of these conference calls from the various counties across the state. Many counties going forward are bringing in their mental health services for people that are confined to their home, especially seniors, to assist where they can and as they're needed. As I think most of us know, mortgage payments for people that are out of work have been suspended for 90 days. And that was by the governor. There was a recommendation by one county that we need to protect our nurses and protect their call centers. We don't need our nurses coming downhill and getting sick. There was talk about the malaria drug, chloroquine, I believe they call it. Seems to have some effect on this virus. And there was also a lot of concern, not only in the Catskills and the Adirondacks, but Finger Lakes and around by Pennsylvania, of people with second homes and escaping the city or escaping New Jersey or wherever it may be and coming to their second home. We would ask that if people do that, that's fine, but they need to contact our public health department and inform them that they have done that, or contact the state health department and inform them so that we know that people are coming up here. God forbid, if one of them is ill, that could be a real problem. Going forward, I think we're going to continue our committee meetings, much in the forum that we have here today. Seems to be working rather well. I think we need to focus on getting information out to our residents. I think our public relations, our social media position that we are contemplating today is very timely. Another thing that was recommended on NISAC is, which I'm not really sure what it is, but it's Facebook Live. They're going to have a webinar, I believe, at 2 p.m. this afternoon on NISAC about Facebook Live. I think that's something that we can do. I'm willing to do it, and I'm sure many others are. We need to communicate with our people. After the health crisis, hopefully it ends sooner rather than later. They're saying 45 to 60 days, best estimate. Hopefully it's sooner than that. We're going to have an economic crisis, at least in the short term. I do believe our revenues are going to dive. Hopefully we can weather it. To that end, I think we need to maybe put together some sort of economic support group of various economic development entities and ourselves. And I think the main goal of it would be to just make sure we have accurate information, and that accurate information gets out to our businesses and to the public doing that. So I guess with that, I believe that's my report. Any questions from anyone? Yes, Supervisor Lee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You had mentioned about second homeowners coming up here and to be able to contact, would that be the county health department at their main number or contact the town and we relay that?
I think probably the county health department
Okay.
would be best. County health department would be best. Shut that guy up. Supervisor Braylon.
Are you saying that they should call county health department upon arrival here or when they get sick? And shouldn't they call their doctor if they get sick? We don't need them to call county health department just because they're arriving here, right? Or are you saying they should?
Well, I think we need to know if they have a problem, if they're not feeling well, which I'm sure they probably will anyhow. But there was a lot of concern from all over the state about that issue. Yes, ma'am.
Thanks. I mean, I know we have lots of communities with our second homeowners and they're bringing economic activity.
Yeah.
So it's kind of helpful to have them here. Of course, we don't want anything to happen to anybody, so yeah.
Well, the goal is to stop the spread. So
Right. If they want to come to their second home and just hang out there, so social isolate there, that's fine.
right. Okay. Next item is our report by committee chairman on past month's meetings or activities.
We're going to try it.
Okay.
So,
We'll
That would be me. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And that was quite an opener, Frank. And like I said, this has been quite a different experience doing this and working with Tammy last night. I was quite nervous, but I'm kind of thinking this is going well. So the support services met February 24th. We really didn't have much on the agenda for the self-insurance with the chainsaw training, which is going to be 8 days, which is really quite a class and a lot of participants are joining in. So, and then we did have a discussion on county clerk with DMV coming up, but basically it was a short committee meeting for support services this month. So that's all for my report, and thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I believe Supervisor Sievers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know I'm over in this corner. Criminal Justice, Assigned Counsel, Public Defender's Office, and Probation all had a chance to meet this past month. In your packets today, you have resolutions number 95 from Criminal Justice for Assigned Counsel, number 96 from the DA's office, and number 97 from Probation. All of those resolutions were approved in committee and through Personnel and Finance. So please take a moment to look at those. In terms of our reports, I did want to share with you an update that I received from our district attorney this morning. Of course, we're having, and I'm sorry, I'm on my phone, I'm pulling up his response to me this morning and share it with you. We've had a lot of questions from the community regarding what's happening in our criminal justice system, specifically bail reform, or criminal justice reform, as our DA correctly calls it. I just wanted to let you know that I'm aware during these meetings we try to report to you the number of inmates that are currently in our facility. I know our county administrator probably has an accurate number. I think last week it was still 58. I've not heard back this morning from our sheriff. Is that correct?
That's the last information I have, most recent information.
Okay, thank you. So our DA wanted to share with you that while our jail numbers are low at the moment, after speaking with the sheriff and along with, of course, court permission from our judges, weekend incarceration was paused several days ago. This will prevent someone from entering the jail on the weekend and bringing in an infection. He also met with our public defender's office this week, and they do have an arrangement for expedited bail applications without appearances. Our public defender is working around the clock and also with our DA reviewing the jail population to see if there are any special circumstances where we would be looking to seek a modification of that status. So I wanted to share that with those of you today and also those of you online and the members of the public that are also tuning in today as well. In addition, I know that typically in the past, you've had your representatives go down to the national training for NACO and come back and do a report. I hope you'll all agree that now's not the time to do that report, and hopefully we can revisit that in the coming months. I know that Supervisor Beatty and I were both able to pick up information for all of your committees to bring back to you, and we'll start that process of either dropping those off or mailing that information to you so that we can limit our contact. In addition, I think it highlights the importance of those trainings and meetings. Yesterday, a few of us spent some time helping with public health or with Meals on Wheels. And because of those meetings, one, for instance, with the Chamber of Commerce, we've been able within a few hours to secure almost 400 bags to be able to provide those drops to our seniors that are, of course, we're all worried about our most vulnerable. And during announcements, Mr. Chairman, I do have a brief announcement that would be appropriate at that time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Supervisor Beatty.
Okay, thanks for unmuting me. You've unleashed the tiger. The two resolutions facilities met last month, resolutions 93 and 94. They're fairly mundane. One's just authorizing for Mr. DeGraw to go down to Pennsylvania for training. I'm not, at this point, I still think that's feasible, pending other situations that may occur with the governor, maybe restricting travel or whatever outside the state. I don't know, but that's resolution 94. 93 was, let me see here, was the just going for a grant for lighting, for LED lighting for the airport. So that's really all that occurred at the last two meetings, or at the last meeting. I concur with Ms. Seaver that this is not the time to go over our Washington trip with everyone. Obviously, we have even more dire issues at hand. So I'd be glad to do that next month or the month after, whenever the board wants a report from Ms. Seaver and I. And I'd also like to just mention that in the announcement section, when we get to it, there's a local company that's flipped over their whole company into making hand sanitizer. And I put something on Facebook. I sent it to the board this morning. They've been using their own money to make these hand sanitizers, but they could use some donations to continue doing it. They're giving out the hand sanitizers for free. And I think as in this day and age right now, we all need more hand sanitizers. So that was sent to the board. Hopefully you guys will pass it along. And I think that's it for right now. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Supervisor Shepard. Any report or any?
Not this time.
Supervisor Gary.
Yeah, I know we're going to face some budget challenges coming up. I've been through it before, and I know there's people in this room who've been through it before, and we'll get through it this time. But, we're watching our budget very closely, and we'll take the appropriate steps when it comes time.
Thank you. Supervisor Conover.
He's not letting me.
24 in front of you, they're all very rudimentary. I won't go into that, but I would like to just quickly, like most of the other towns, we're on complete lockdown of our municipal buildings. Our crews have been sent home and are on a call-in basis. We are operating our transfer stations, but that is on a scaled-down basis. But at this time, I really would like to reach out to Commissioner Hajos and thank Commissioner Hajos for on-the-fly setting up a mutual aid arrangement between the county and the towns. The idea being that if a municipal or county infection happens, it could be the whole crew is quarantined. And then if we get a major snowstorm or emergency, who is there to respond? So to Commissioner Kajosin and to you, Ryan, for allowing that to happen, I thank you very much. I think that hopefully we won't need it, but should it be needed, that mutual aid arrangement on the highway is, I think, an essential thing to have in place. And I will also, and those of you, those towns that have not responded to the mutual aid arrangement can do so by contacting Superintendent Hajos, and the idea being that everything would go through the commissioner and his, he would assign responsibilities appropriately. And I also want a big shout out to Mayor Blaze. As many of you know, a number of the municipalities operate public sewer and water systems. The same situation could develop where we have our crews, which are limited to begin with, quarantined for some fashion, for some reason, in which case we would need licensed operators to operate our sewer and water plants. And we've also set up a mutual aid cooperative amongst those municipalities that have public sewer and water systems. The last thing we need to do in the middle of an emergency is to lose the public water supply or sewer service. So again, a big shout out to Mayor Blaze and you, Ryan, for helping to make all of that happen. And then on a final note, I just want to say I've been through a number of these emergencies in my time, the ice storm most recently, hurricanes, a couple of them at least, and a number of other things. And I just want you to know, Ryan, that I think that you and your team are doing a superlative job communicating the situation, communicating the requirements as they come down from the federal and state government. And so to you and your team, please stay healthy and keep up the good work. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Leggett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let's see, this is a report here for public safety. We met on 24th. Before you are 6 resolutions. The first one is adopting a comprehensive emergency management plan. This is an update. And I just want to say it only needed a few revisions. And use this minute. How's that? Oh my gosh. There we go. We're fortunate to have such a good Office of Emergency Services that does keep us up to date with our emergency management plan, because as we well know, it's times like this where you need to have those. No more. Should I put on my, should I unmute? Okay. The next resolution is one about ensuring privacy. This is part of the fallout from the Discovery and Bail Reform. Emergency responders, we're requesting that they do not need to divulge their private information when they respond to a scene. Another is for executing an agreement with Village of Lake George to provide police presence by the Sheriff's Office. This is a budget neutral resolution. Can you hear now? Is that better? Sound like what now?
Get closer.
Is that better?
Really close to my.
How's that?
Yeah.
Can you hear me? All right. We're upping the amount of resource officers for Hadley Missouri School. There's a resolution in front of you for that. And then to loan obsolete radios to Queensbury volunteer fire company and Bolton volunteer fire company. And then just an award bid for repairs to the cars with Emer.
They still can't hear him.
Yeah, it's a number.
That's it, my chair?
I
Sit right here. I have to sit way up here.
My chair.
I saw you waving, Brad.
okay. How's that?
Oh, that's my.
Here, let him sit here.
Sorry.
You can sit here.
So what did everybody else do? You know what? I'm feeling marginalized. I'm sitting in the middle here. You know, but appropriate spot for an independent to be in the aisle.
That's right.
So, and actually at this time, if there's no objection, Mr. Chairman, I'd like the Director of Office of Emergency Services to come up and perhaps speak to the situation, how his office has been handling things so far.
Without objection.
Yeah. Brian, would you like to come up and say a few words? Hopefully your mic will work.
Yeah, I'm not gonna use it.
Good morning. Office of Emergency Services has been working very closely with the task force and the rest of the people in the room. Kudos to Janelle and her team are working harder than we are. One of the things that we've been tasked with by the state is our office has to be the liaison between any agencies, nursing homes, hospital, responders, whatever that is in need of additional equipment, PPE, personal protective equipment. And they have to make that request through our office, and then we send them back a form for them to fill out, and they send it back, and then we in turn put it into the state system. That was a great idea. It's supposed to work, and it has worked up until the point where the state stockpile now has been depleted.
Hey, Brian, do you want to sit in Kevin's chair?
I don't know anything else. You can take it over by video.
You can do the budget.
How about that? Does that work? Oh, no, I broke it.
Break it, break it. You're only allowed to say 10 words.
All right. Is that working for you, Tammy? Yes?
It's work, I can hear you fine, we're in the same room, but they may be having difficulty.
All right. Well, let me keep going. The issue with the stockpile has become basically a critical point. You all hear that in the news, the problems with having test kits but no swabs, having the equipment to protect our responders and more importantly, our healthcare workers. This is a very serious issue. Every morning at 8:30, we have a conference call with my counterparts in Washington, Saratoga, and the state. And unfortunately, we're all in the same boat, along with a lot of the rest of the people in the state. I wish there was a better answer. We do know that the state has reached out, Governor Cuomo reached out to the federal government to see if we can get stuff out of their stockpile. It's an issue, and some people have been coming up with some interesting workarounds, everything from wearing a bandana or a scarf, or these things are not going to work for the healthcare workers, especially those out in the field that don't have the ability to use anything other than what they have in their vehicle, i.e. the responders. So it is an issue. We're working on it. We're doing our best to give out what we can. Unfortunately, we can't give out things that we don't have. So I know some of you town supervisors have heard from your rescue squads about their concerns, and it's an issue. We're doing our best with it. One thing we did receive from the state, you have heard that they are producing now their own hand sanitizer at the Great Meadow Correctional Facility. They've retooled some equipment there to do that. We did receive one shipment of 40 gallons of the hand sanitizer that they produce. Unfortunately, it comes in gallon jugs and is not a gel as you may be used to using yourselves. It's a straight liquid, has to go into a spray bottle. We have dispensed all that. We did the first day to those with the highest need, nursing homes and other facilities that have reached out to us. So we're prioritizing as best we can the requests that we get. I wish we had more to hand out, but we just don't. So
We're hoping we'll get additional shipments from the state. Again, we don't get any heads up on that other than maybe an hour before they're going to deliver that they're going to show up. So again, I wish we could do more than that for the schools and all the other agencies that have reached out to us. It's hard because we can't fill the orders. So, but that's where we're going with that. As you're also aware, you know that we have an EMS scenario that has been difficult in our county. This particular situation is not making it any better. There are responders that are not showing up for work or calling in sick or whatever the answer is, and that is making the shortage of providers that we have even worse than it has been. So we're working very hard. Our EMS coordinators have put together a scenario where they're meeting with the squads via conference call almost every day. They're all sharing, making sure that if one group has an extra person, they can share that with someone else, even more than the sharing that we were doing before. So we're trying really hard to make that happen. One thing I did want to mention as a result of one of the executive orders that came out of the governor's office, for those of you that have done a state of emergency, I'll read this to you real quick. This is Executive Order 202.5. Notwithstanding Section 24 of the Executive Law, no locality or political subdivision shall issue any local emergency order or executive order with respect to the COVID-19 outbreak without the approval of the State Department of Health. So something to keep in mind. I don't know that any of you are going to need or going to be doing any kind of an order like that, but it is important to know that we have been we have received orders for a lot of different things that's coming out of the governor's office on a daily basis. And if you watch the press release or the press conferences, you'll see what I mean. So as far as our office goes, I'll finish up our office. Amy and I and our staff, we have split and we're working split shifts so that only one of us is manning the EOC each day. And that way there, we can have coverage but not have to worry about too much about the social distancing. I did mention that my personal way to do the social distancing was I removed the doorknob on the inside of Amy's door so that once I closed the door that we had the social distance. So that is working out okay. Our clerk is working from home. She comes in as necessary, like all the other departments are doing for mail or invoices, whatever. So if you need anything from our office, our phones are being forwarded to our cell phones, and we're doing okay with that. Our EMS people are on this and have been putting together a lot of things that they're working on. So that's my report. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Some guessed the beginning of his, as we explained, technical difficulties, the beginning of Brian's report. If that could be, if we could get a part of that after the budget, that would be very helpful.
Okay.
Thanks, Brian.
Thank you.
That's my report, Mr. Chairman.
Supervisor Diamond.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No committee reports today.
Thank you. Supervisor McGriffin.
No report this morning, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Supervisor Bramer.
Thank you so much, Chairman. Environmental concerns and real property did meet twice in the last month. In the first meeting, we had some of our regular resolutions, and you'll see those starting with 102. I won't go through each one, but I do believe we need to pull out 103 because that was the resolution rejecting all bids for the auctioneering services. And when we met on Tuesday, we decided that we did want to award one of the bids so that we did not have to go back out for the RFP. And that's resolution 142, which is later in your packet. And I do believe that Supervisor Diamond will have an amendment to 106 for us to consider, which did go out to everyone by email yesterday. Thank you, Amanda. And given that these are unprecedented times of turmoil due to the coronavirus, it's very important that we get out as much information as we can to the public about what the county is doing. We're doing tons of great stuff, especially through public health. Oh yes, thank you very much, guys. And in order to facilitate getting some more information out to people who don't typically go to their regular news media, there is now a Facebook page for the Warren County Board of Supervisors. And Supervisor Siebert and myself have committed to managing that page and making sure that there's accurate, non-political information, and we will work to post updates there and respond to comments as appropriate. If any other supervisors are committed to doing that as well, you are more than welcome to also work on that page. And we are Facebook Living it today as a little test run. I'm not sure that people are able to hear everything, but it is a way for us to be able to give the public a little bit more access to the board meetings since they can't be here in person. That's my report today. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Bruno.
Yes.
Any report, any comment?
No, I have none. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Supervisor Driscoll.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Excuse me. Human Services met on March 2nd. There's only a couple of resolutions included in your packet today. Resolution 111 is in regard to a fabrication of some equipment. I'm sorry, fabrication of equipment at Countryside. 112 is the appointment and reappointment of members to Warren County Youth Boards, 8 individuals from throughout the county, including Supervisor Scheffler. His names are on there for his nomination. I would encourage you to approve those. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for your including the Department of Social Services and your kudos of departments. DSS is working hard. Their customers are vulnerable populations, individuals on low and fixed incomes, certainly struggling as we all are, but maybe more so. I'm aware that countywide, a lot of the food pantries are remaining open. They're doing their business a little bit differently than normal. Much like their counterparts in restaurants, they're bagging up groceries and personal care items as best they can, and to go or curbside, if you will. So I would encourage residents from throughout the county to contact local food pantries, many of which are located in town halls. To find out details as far as dates and times that they will be in operation. And I certainly appreciate the work of the volunteers and staff who man those sites. And of course, our senior population and our youth population who receive meals are getting those, and I commend all the individuals working on that too. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Frazier.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Finance Committee met on March the 5th. As a result of that, we have resolution number 92 and resolutions 135 through 139. I want you to pay attention to 136. This is amending resolution number 186 of 2016 to amend the unassigned fund balance policy for Warren County. It's changing from a dollar amount to a percentage amount. But when Mr. Swan gives his report to us, I think we'll go into a little bit more detail with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Where do you want?
It's right there.
Let's try it there. Good morning. Is that good?
Can you just make sure you introduce yourself?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Well, I just want to make sure it was working first. Good morning, everybody. Mike Swan, County Treasurer. Is everybody hearing? So we're all set?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. All right. First of all, resolution number 136 in your packet, I would like your support for that. Basically, it's changing the, like Supervisor Frazier said, how our unassigned fund balance from a dollar figure, which the old resolution said a minimum of 9 million and a maximum of 16 million, to a percentage, which would be, I want to phase it in at 15% for the first 5 years, which amounts to about $22 million based on our current budget, with a maximum of well over 27 million. Is there any question about that before I go on? Okay. Now, normally you always try to have some good news. Unfortunately, that's not going to be the case this morning. I think that at this point in time, because of everything that's going on, and I've had several questions about projecting maybe the impact of what we're dealing with financially, I just want to give you some basic information about this. Just to show you where we're seeing a few hits right immediately. Interest income, we had projected for the year, is going to be about $200,000 short based on what's happened right now. The casino's closing, that's going to run us probably about a loss of about $100,000. Those are just two small things. The sales tax, this could be a problem on the short term. But before I go into that, I do want to say that I don't want to panic anybody, and I don't think we need to panic. Warren County is probably one of the best financial conditions of most of the counties in the state. This board has done an excellent job over the last 10 years. We have a good unencumbered fund balance, but we're going to need it, and that's what it's for, because we're going to see some rough times. Just to give you an idea, sales tax, the restaurants and car sales make up 20% of our sales tax. All right, our restaurants are closed, and the last report I had from the car dealers, they're not selling any cars. Okay, retail sales make up 24% of our sales tax. Malls closed, there isn't much going on. The only good thing that I'm hearing is that there's been a huge uptick in online sales, and we do get collection from that. So I got my fingers crossed that that's going to balance out some of the losses. Occupancy tax is another thing that's going to take a pretty good hit. We have one property in Warren County that pays 40% of the occupancy tax for the month of February and March, and they're closed. Okay. Two other properties that contribute another 30% of our occupancy tax have told me they don't have the cash flow to pay us. It probably won't until July. Okay, so occupancy tax collections are going to take a pretty good size hit. The other thing that this is an area that concerns me more than anything else, which is cash flow. We rely very heavily on state and federal funds for our agencies like DSS, Public Health, Public Defender, District Attorney, Planning. We all receive money, and there's several other agencies. Okay, we're already seeing a slowdown in those payments coming to us, and it's only been 2 weeks, basically. So I'm worried about our cash flow. Fortunately, we got a lot to draw from, and I'm assuming that these payments will be made. It's just, they're slowing down. I would recommend very strongly that from this point forward, for at least the next 4 months, we make no expenditures out of the unencumbered fund balance, because that's our safety net. Okay? And I would also strongly recommend that we do no purchases, large purchases of anything that doesn't have a reserve behind it or some sort of grant money behind it. Okay? If we've already got the money set aside for it, that's fine. But if we don't, and it's something extra, I think we really need for the next 3 or 4 months to try and just stop doing everything. Okay? And I'm not trying to panic, but I think what we need to do is we need to see where everything is going to go. Is this going to be a short term, or is it going to be a long term problem? Okay. One thing, and this is something that our budget officer is going to have to deal with, because of the crash. I'm sure that our retirement funds payments are going to go up in 2021, as they did the last time that there was a recession. We budgeted for 2020 $6 million into the retirement payments. The last time that this happened, we saw about a 10% increase in the payment for the next year at $600,000. So But, there you go, Kevin. Excuse me. So now, the other thing is, with payroll, we do have, the majority of our staff is home. Some of them are working from home, some of them have just been sent home. We, in payroll, we are tracking this very closely. We work with the department heads to set this up, because if people have been sent home and they're not working at home, it's my understanding that we can get eventually reimbursement for that time, so that the county will be offset for that expense. If they were sent home and working at home, then that's not the case. So we're very closely monitoring that and setting that up so that we make sure that we get every nickel that we can from any outside sources to compensate for that. And I want to thank our administrator for all the work that he and his staff have done. It's been amazing what we've been able to accomplish, and it seems like forever, but it's only been a week and a half or 2 weeks. Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Treasurer Sherlin.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. I'd like to just say one thing. I also would like to thank Mr. Moore and his staff for the tremendous job that they've done. They kept us well informed, we've been updated, but when I look at an email and it says 12:22 a.m., I say to myself, when does this mean sleep? You know, so they certainly are putting in hours that are above and beyond, but I certainly want to thank all of them. So, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Yes,
Supervisor Wild has his hand up. He would like to say something.
Supervisor Wild.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. And Tammy, thanks for trying to manage this technology for us. But I do have a question for our treasurer, Mike. When do you think you might have an austerity budget plan? I know you need to work with Kevin, but I'm just curious, when do you think you might be able to present that to the different department heads so we can start making some plans accordingly?
Well, I think right now the status quo will work fine. I think that we stay with the budget that we have and see where it goes in the next couple of months. We will be monitoring this to see where we end up, to see where the revenues are falling off. But at this point, we're working behind the scenes on this. Unfortunately, like all the other departments, I don't have much staff running around downstairs right now. And we're trying to make sure that payroll gets done and that the bills get paid. And we also are under the mandates from the state, which they have not changed the filing date for our closing of the books report. So we're trying to get all of this stuff done I got 4 people down here right now.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm sure more questions will come up as we move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Simpson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Personnel met March 5th also. And in that committee meeting, we had resolutions 129 through 134 in front of you. And I want to highlight 2 of them. 130 is reappointing our Warren County Personnel Officer. Very happy that we're doing that. And also, actually, the resolution that I was going to highlight, my second one is going through finance. So I just want to say how important I really think that the public communications officer, or whatever title we attach to that, is going to be a critical position within our county moving forward, whether this is an extended downturn in our economy or whether it's a short term. I think information is good, and I think it will help us communicate with the public and everyone else in a much easier way. So I just, that's the end of my report. And I want to thank everybody that we've worked with also, the town of Horton. I know I've called Brian on an issue, and I knew Brian would give me the right information the first time. And I've had communications with Ryan, and everybody has done a great job. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Hogan.
Just one moment and I'll.
There you go.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before I report on the Cornell Cooperative Extension, I want to ask for everyone's support for Resolution 98. That is more important now than it has ever been. We have people up here who cannot get access to adequate internet. Their children are parking in town hall parking lot so they can do their homework. And I have people who are unable to work from home. So please support 98. As for the Cornell Cooperative Extension, the programs, workshops, and activities have been suspended, obviously. The offices are closed to the public and to volunteers. The staff is continuing to work as hard as they ever do. They've been busy developing online instructional videos and programs. Those will be going up on their YouTube channel. One way that you can support your local Cornell Cooperative Extension is to participate in their annual plant sale fundraiser. Order forms are available through email, and you can return your order via regular mail or again through email. So please go to their website to get your order form, and let's think about spring and the future and maybe some lighter thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Hogan. Supervisor Dickinson?
Supervisor Dickinson?
Okay. Supervisor Molina?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tourism met on March 2nd. You got 3 resolutions in your packet. The agreement to gather on the tourism council. The second one is to authorize the motor coach travel. I think we still have to do this, even though we probably won't get to a couple of these until July or October. I think we still need the resolution to go through when the time comes.
I'm not sure if anyone can hear me, but can everyone make sure their line is muted? Because it takes over the whole process here. We can't hear anything else but a phone. And right now, Tom, that might be you on your iPhone. I don't know for sure, but can everyone mute, please?
If you could start speaking.
Okay, are you ready for me back? Okay. And the last one is the resolution 128 for the Tourism Council Advisory Group, which I mentioned at our meeting. 3 members, Sam Luciano, Ed Moore, Mark Behan. I've been speaking to a couple other people to get the 4th one. That will be forthcoming. Any other information on tourism? Right now, tourism, we are on a paid media spending. We're not doing any media at the time. We are using organic, unpaid social media to maintain the awareness of our destination area. We are sharing up business event posts. We also are sharing restaurant openings that takeout. This is all on our website. We are doing virtual imaging so that people can imagine what our destination looks like for future reservations. And we are answering all calls or comments. We're staff down there, half of the staff is out, the other half is switching over day after day. We are doing a statewide banner advertising, and we're checking with businesses for their events that might still be up or their businesses that are closing. And we're working with I Love New York and New York State partnering in messaging. And we're just reassuring the visitors that we are still here and we're maintaining everything. And as soon as possible, we'll be getting out. We're planning a lot of media exposure as soon as humanly possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Sherrill.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is this coming in okay? All right. Yes, well, I'd like to thank all the town supervisors and the city mayor for working cooperatively. This is an extraordinarily difficult time for all of us town supervisors and the city mayor and the village mayor, I should add. I do have one update, and thank you we've been sharing plans and sharing thoughts, and that's been appreciated. We can develop our own a little bit more thoroughly and better because of that sharing.
We've offered to also share highway department services. That is a good thing. We're working cooperatively. I think that's all good. I do have one thing to report to you. As of this morning, I get a clarification from the governor's office. The 75% reduction does not apply to municipalities. It applies to businesses and nonprofits. So I got that clarification this morning. In any event, as we go forward, I appreciate all the hard work you're doing, and I do appreciate working with the county. Thank you, Ryan. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Brian. Tammy, nice working with you yesterday. So we'll get through this difficult time by working together. So I appreciate that, and I want to thank you. All right. The Legislative and Rules Committee did meet on St. Patty's Day, and we have 3 resolutions before you. The first one, 143, is just to say 0% Medicaid growth. We don't want the state of New York putting any more burden on the counties for Medicaid. 144 is a resolution to correct the name of Halfway Creek to Halfway Brook. Some time back, somebody put on the U.S. geodesic map Halfway Creek, and it's always been Halfway Brook. 1755, when the colonial soldiers were here, and they named it Halfway Brook because it was halfway between Fort Everett and Lake George, or Fort William Henry. They named it Halfway Brook. It's never been Halfway Creek, except for on that U.S. map. This is saying, this is, getting your support to correct that name. And Resolution 144 is just changing our night meeting to Wednesday, October 14th at 6 p.m. And that's it as far as the Legislative and Rules Committee goes. But I do want to emphasize that you do have Resolution 106 for you tonight. It is in reference to the 275 Bay Road in the town of Queensbury. The Mullen Building is also known as. No further delay in what needs to be done to this building is warranted. 3 times it's gone to the committee. And again, the resolution 106, the one that appears before you tonight, is the one that was approved by the committee. And I know how Supervisor Bramer hates when we put resolutions before this board that were not supported by the committee, or were put before this board at the last minute. I know she hates doing it. Now, but moving on, the residents of the town of Queensbury, the town board, will appreciate your support for Resolution 106, and no further delay is warranted. We talk about other possible interested parties, none of which, and this went before this board last month, I wasn't here. And it's before this board again. Nobody's come to me with any interest whatsoever. Let's remediate this very unsafe building. It's a building that is asbestos. It's falling in on itself. It is a public health hazard. I would deeply appreciate your support of Resolution 106 as it's being presented to you tonight. And thank you for that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Supervisor Wild.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can everyone hear me all right? Maybe I might just give you a nod or something. Thank you, everyone. I'm just going to speak briefly about the resolutions that are in front of you from the Economic Growth, Development, Higher Education and Planning. 98 through 101, Supervisor Hogan mentioned 98. This one is authorizing our chairman to write a letter to the legislature to remove the fees that are being placed on the companies that are trying to bring internet, high-speed internet, and cable and cell service to our northern residents in our northern towns. This is very critical. Everybody realizes that most industries are forcing the people to work from home. Not forcing, but requesting that. I think it's important that we try to get ahead of the game and try to make sure that we can support our rural residents and give them the tools they need to be able to work in these tough times. In addition to that, there's a couple of other resolutions. I don't think they really deserve talking about. We can cover those in discussions if the sections to do that, but I'd like to support on all four of those resolutions. Additionally, I'd like to talk briefly about committee meetings. We will be holding a committee meeting on Tuesday. I don't think it's going to be about economic development. It's going to be more about how do we sustain what we have and how do we help recover our economy. I'm doing this primarily not to take any action, but to have it as an opportunity to be able to communicate to some of our citizens and some of our businesses in terms of the great efforts that the county is doing and some of the other leadership that our town, city, and counties are doing in terms of supporting our economy. So I look forward to doing that Tuesday, and I hope that we can find a way to be able to use this as a forum to get the word out, again, about what a great job that it is doing. And with that, I'll just yield my time back to the chair.
Thank you. Next, we have the report by the county administrator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Everybody hear me okay? Okay. Yes? Okay. You just let us know, Mike, if you can. Thank you for your text helping us out with that issue. I just want to announce that the executive order that we issued yesterday required the approval of the state health commissioner. The state health commissioner did grant that approval. We're all set. I think I would like to read from the executive order because the public is watching the live stream to the extent that the public has not yet read the order or heard what's in it. It is posted on all of our doors and is posted on our website on the county's main page of warrencountiny.gov. You can access it there. Whereas a national state of emergency has been declared by the United States as part of the response to COVID-19, and whereas a state of emergency has also been declared by the state of New York and Warren County also in response to COVID-19, and whereas we encourage all those in the community to continue all efforts of social distancing as an effective public health measure to prevent and slow the transmission of COVID-19, and rely upon facts and information provided by federal, state, and local health and public safety officials. Now it is hereby ordered, pursuant to the state of emergency in Warren County related to the COVID-19 pandemic, and by virtue of the authority of the chairman of the Board of Supervisors, all buildings and indoor spaces of the County of Warren are hereby ordered to remain in a state of restricted access. Members of the general public shall not have access to county premises. Buildings and indoor spaces administered by the New York State Office of Court Administration shall be exempted under this order and shall abide by all orders duly promulgated by the OCA. The effective date is immediate. It will remain in effect for 30 days or until lifted by the chairman of the Warren County Board of Supervisors, whichever occurs first. Our staffing protocols during the pendency of this order, the following protocols shall apply to Warren County employees. 1, essential departments playing a direct role in the COVID-19 response, including but not limited to the sheriff, health services, Office of Emergency Services, county administrator, county attorney, and others as determined by the chairman, shall continue working on site at the volume necessary to respond to this emergency and in a manner that complies with the Centers for Disease Control and New York State Department of Public Health guidelines. Number 2, work activities that cease to be necessary by virtue of the public no longer having physical access to county premises are hereby suspended. Personnel performing those activities are deemed non-essential unless repurposed by the county to perform essential services, and such non-essential personnel will be sent home. 3, department heads have discretion to designate certain work activities as being essential for the public welfare or the continuity of county government and which can be performed remotely. Such designations are subject to disapproval by the chairman. Essential work activities that cannot be performed remotely shall only be approved by the chairman and be performed on site at the volume necessary to serve the public and in a manner that complies with Centers for Disease Control and New York State Department of Public Health guidelines. Meetings, official meetings of the Board of Supervisors and standing committees and ad hoc committees thereof shall be conducted remotely in compliance with state law and the executive authority of the governor of the state of New York. Meetings of other public bodies that would otherwise utilize county premises shall not be held on county premises. All non-essential in-person meetings or gatherings shall not be held on county premises. Essential in-person meetings of employees authorized to have access to county premises shall abide by the social distancing and COVID-19 prevention protocols recommended by the Centers for Disease Control and the New York State Department of Health. As I typically do, I just wanted to go through some of the resolutions and any changes that we have. I am recommending, and I've discussed this with the Economic Growth Chairman, Supervisor Wild, as well as other supervisors, in the Resolution 129, which is the monthly compensation schedule amendment. We would like to propose, if it's moved, seconded, and approved by this board, we'd like to propose, for the moment, removing the position in planning and community development. We have a proposal on that resolution right now to create a senior planner and delete an assistant county planner number 2. You'll see the $0 next to that position that exists now. That's because the funding for that position is part of the reserves that the chairman created last year when he was budget officer. We believe that this position was going to be for getting the capital improvement plan up and running. Although that is still a very important priority of the county, in the spirit of what Treasurer Swan was discussing, we do have to start enacting some austerity measures. We still very much have this position in the cards. We're just asking to delay on creating it and filling it and spending that money until the capital improvement plan rises back up on the list of priorities of the county.
Thank you, Tammy. I just want to let all the supervisors know that Ryan and I discussed this and I was for agreement and I can support that. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to go into the floor resolutions, and you'll see with each of these resolutions, there's an accompanying resolution to waive the rules of the board, requiring that the resolutions are provided to all of you on the Tuesday prior to the regular board meeting. We know that that's been a sensitive issue regarding late-breaking resolutions, and we're going to make sure that we are absolutely in accordance with the rules of the board on these resolutions that don't meet that requirement. So the first one, which would be floor resolution number 1, calling on the members of the New York State Senate and Assembly to reject the governor's executive budget proposal to shift 100% of the cost of competency restoration services to counties. Peter McDevitt, Supervisor McDevitt, Chairman of the Public Health Committee, asked me to speak to the details on this. This refers to Criminal Procedure Law, Section 730, which is in reference to a defendant's ability to competently stand trial. What that means is a defendant is competent if the defendant understands the charges against them and if they have the ability to assist in their own defense. And in some cases, depending on mental health issues and things of that nature, defendants cannot exercise those rights that they have under the U.S. Constitution. So basically what happens is 2 psychiatric examiners are appointed to make that determination. And if they agree, there's a restoration to competency procedure, where these individuals, if their inmates are sent to a secure facility that specializes in restoration to competency. That process is very expensive. It's about $1,000 a day, and an average case takes 30 to 60 days, so $30,000 to $60,000. And if it's a difficult case, it could take much longer. But at the end of the day, the counties are paying half that bill, and we're not allowed to use any state aid or federal aid to offset it. It has to be a county expense. The proposal in the executive budget is to change our share from 50% to 100%. And what that means, just in terms of the numbers, I asked Rob York to pull those numbers. Thank you to him for doing so. We used to budget $25,000 in this line. We've had to increase that appropriation to $40,000 because of costs over the past 5 years. Last year, well, actually, so far this year, this is through March 15th, we spent $12,778. Last year, all told, we spent $14,895. In 2018, $92,842. In 2016, $22,692. And the effect of this provision in the budget, if it goes through, all those numbers I read, that's the amount of the additional hit on county finances if this measure stays in the executive budget. So that's floor resolution number 1. Thank you to all that helped pull together the information to properly describe that to you.
When we have an opportunity to have some hands raised.
Should I continue?
No, yeah.
Okay. The second floor resolution, also accompanied by waiving the rules of the board, is to appropriate money into the health services budget. This is state aid to deal with the coronavirus. We had some other late-breaking resolutions that were included and sent out to the board. Resolution number of 141, which, sorry, I'm refamiliarizing myself. I think Supervisor Bramer spoke to this one. This is, hang on, bear with me a second. I need to remember what I'm looking at. Is this one in reference to the proposed resolution? Yeah, 141.
141
It's like 141 is.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's in reference to 142. 142. The following resolution came late through committee. And correct, Amanda?
Yeah, 141
Yeah.
waived the rules for all
Okay.
of the environmental concerns and legislative resolutions.
Got it. So that includes the Bros Tech Real Estate Auction Company. The committee had initially decided to reject all bids. That posed a hardship to our purchasing department. And we instead decided to authorize a contract for a year with the most responsible bidder, and we'll re-advertise this with online capabilities. Resolution 143, Supervisor Strau already alluded to. And I'd just like to add, this is the resolution calling on the governor and the state legislature to preserve the 0% Medicaid growth cap that has benefited all counties and allowed us to abide by the property tax cap. I would just like to mention that NISAC has put together a calculator for counties to use that will estimate a range of financial impact on us if this stays in the budget. And NISAC estimates that impact to Warren County to be as much as $1.7 million a year out of county funds. Supervisor Strau already spoke to resolution 144 and 145. Moving on. It's day 14 of our response since the case involving the CVS pharmacist was first announced. Most of us have been flat out since then, working all day, every day. I think everybody's holding up well. Thank you especially to Janelle and her staff. They are doing God's work in that office. They're in there doing an excellent job. And one of the really important things that they're doing that I believe has kept this county safe is their relationship with the individuals that are quarantined. It's critical nationwide in this response that there's good communication between the local officials and those who are under quarantine, and trust. Because if there's not, the most dangerous thing that can happen is for people that ought to be in quarantine who don't feel sick deciding to go out of the house and run to the store or something like that. That's the most important thing around the country that public health officials can be doing, is making sure that they keep a good relationship with these quarantine people, check in with them regularly, make sure they do what they're supposed to do. And I have to commend Janelle and Pat and all of the staff who do this communication, who've established that trust. And I also have to commend the people who are under quarantine for being so responsible to the health of all the rest of us in doing their part. At the end of the day, when all the dust settles, there will be a lot of congratulations and thanks that need to go out, and it's first and foremost to all of those individuals. The department heads have all been fantastic. We've all gone to work, especially the past week, expecting to, and town supervisors, you've been going through it too. You go to work expecting to accomplish an objective that's a mammoth objective, and then you get into it, and then the situation changes, and you've got to do a whole other mammoth objective that we have no precedent for actually enacting. I think that everybody's really kept up with it well. Monday, it was declaring a state of emergency in response to some of the public access orders that came down from the state and federal government. Tuesday, we had our first positive test. That was a lot to handle and try to get the best information we could out to the public. We were also at the same time implementing the staffing reduction here at the county and at the towns. Very, very involved effort, and all the department heads really stepped up to the plate and did an excellent job getting that implemented. We were ahead of the curve, most counties. We were basically down to 50% staff by Tuesday morning, and that was a real accomplishment because we only started it on Monday. That was Tuesday. Wednesday, we were dealing with, we started to set up the Board of Supervisors meeting, knowing that we had supervisors that wanted to stay away and observe social distancing. You see all the technology that's being utilized today, not without a few glitches, but for a trial run, we're doing pretty well. And I'm really happy that we were able to get all of that set up. And that's been a lot of work on Amanda's staff and my staff over the past 3 days. And then yesterday, we made the decision to do the restricted access program. Again, that was something that the department heads turned around right away, got it in place so that when the order came out at the end of the day yesterday, we're fully compliant with it today. Just a tremendous accomplishment on the part of 30 individuals dealing with 850 staff to try to get this into play and make it work. We also have an obligation to do our best to make sure that clients continue to get the services that they need. Our department's doing an excellent job with that outreach. Our supervisors, you've all done an excellent job utilizing the media available to you to pass that information out. Thank you for that. We do have, again, for the benefit of any members of the public that are listening, we do have a contact sheet posted on our website. If you need anything from any of our departments, those emails and those phone numbers will be constantly monitored. Somebody will get back to you and make sure that you get whatever service it is that you need. Let's see. Thank you to the media. The media has been, in my opinion, very responsible in the coverage. It's difficult to strike a balance between taking this seriously and imparting to the public that they should also take it seriously without causing a panic. And I think the media understands that very well, and I think that they have done that. And I can't thank them enough for that because that's not happening in every place in this country, but it is here and it's working. And the public, the general public, of course, has been great. We have a great spirit of cooperation and public service out there, people wanting to know what they can do to help. People's hearts are open. Supervisors on this board have been directly involved in that, and we can't thank you enough for your desire to help and make sure that vulnerable people in our county get the help that they need and make sure that everybody's okay. Check in with people that live near you, check in with your family. make sure the people you know that are at risk are doing what they should be doing to keep themselves safe. The best thing any of us can do is, to the extent we can, stay home. That's the most important thing that can be done to contain this virus. If there are, I know that there's been a lot of discussion about making donations for especially our seniors that may be in need, putting together care packages. Our Office for the Aging Director came up with an idea to put those care packages together a couple of days ago, utilizing goods that were available to Office for the Aging, and to reach out to supervisors who have been trying to do all they can to help with this response effort, to include them in that. Excellent idea. I gave her the go-ahead right away to do that. I'm really pleased that that came together. The important thing for us to realize from a donation standpoint, if the general public does want to provide goods, and especially food items, toilet paper, things like that, if the general public wants to donate those items, again, everybody's heart is in the right place. We just have to make sure that it's done in a manner that's compliant with public health recommendations. During a time like this, it's always advisable to utilize the agency systems that are already in place and not to create redundancy. These agencies are in the community. They know what they're doing. They keep posted on all the latest guidance from the CDC and DOH, because a well-intentioned effort carried out the wrong way can be counterproductive in spreading this virus. Janelle and her team are putting together a list of community organizations that are set up to do this, that are willing to take those donations that members of the public want to give. We will have that list out as soon as it's done, and as soon as the organizations on it know that we're going to do it, so that they're prepared to handle it. We'll post that online for anybody that wants to direct members of the public there. Thank you for the sentiment behind this. It's admirable. We just have to make sure that what we do does not have unintended consequences. Looking forward, we'll continue operating under restricted access for as long as it's needed. We'll listen to the advice of our local public health and public safety officials, as well as state and federal, to determine how to phase this out as the danger subsides, and how to get everything running back the way it was. We'll probably have to unwind what we wound up, and now that we've done it one way, it should be easier to do it the other way. And as has been mentioned by several supervisors, when this public health crisis subsides, we will have an economic crisis to manage, and it's going to be a serious one. The next planning exercise I'll ask all the departments to do is start to come up with fiscal austerity measures. What we do now to save money will help us avoid layoffs down the road. And that's my highest priority as county administrator, is to make sure that our staff who are dedicated, who provide public service, are able to continue doing that by keeping their jobs. A couple of the counties in this region have gone over to time and a half for anybody that's working and declared essential during this crisis. We have not. We've had pressure to do that. Our view on that is time and a half now, if layoffs are going to come, means layoffs sooner than they would otherwise come. And we believe that it's in the interest of all of our employees to do our work and get paid straight time for it. Supervisor Wild and Chairman Thomas mentioned that we will be creating an economic recovery task force. We have some ideas on certainly business sector representatives. There's interest in the superintendents who we've been speaking closely with in having at least 2 of their superintendents in that group. The message that I want to impart to the public, which has already been imparted several times, including by the Congresswoman, is that we're thinking about this. There will be help for businesses that are impacted, for people that are out of work. we will do all we can do to be forward-thinking and have a sound plan that we implement to make sure that our region gets through the economic crisis that's going to come, and that economic toll is that we have as little pain as we possibly can. We're dedicated to that. We're already thinking about it and already starting to work on it. And also the other long-range thing that I've certainly seen a need for is lessons learned. As we go, we have, particularly in this county, we have excellent plans in place, and we have an excellent structure to respond to these things. It's proven out in the rapidity with which our departments have executed big tasks that really need to be done to protect public health and public safety. The response has been great, but no response is perfect. And these crises always reveal where there are holes. We're taking note of those. I know the towns are as well. One of them is at the very highest levels, our county leadership can do a better job in the future communicating across silos with other leaders. You know, the issue is the schools have an excellent plan to handle the schools. The county's got an excellent plan to handle the county. Healthcare has an excellent plan to handle healthcare. Business has an excellent plan to handle business. But what's missing is a layer above all of that, where we have designated representatives of all of those different groups who get together periodically and talk and have a relationship, so that when situations like this come up, it's first and foremost in our minds to make those connections before any silo starts making decisions that adversely affects a different silo. That's probably the biggest thing that we've discovered so far, and it's something that we will work hard to adapt to in our future planning. We've had IT, thank you. We've had all IT. It's been all hands on deck at IT. We're doing, I think, a good job. Everything is running. And a couple of glitches with the email server at night. And again, these are just things that you realize are vulnerabilities when they happen. But Mike Colvin and his team on the email server have been right on it. Mike was actually making his way across the country due to a canceled vacation, and he was on that in his hotel room, working remotely with his staff to handle these situations. Communication is another one. When you have all of the staff doing what they need to be doing to protect the workforce, protect the public, respond in real time to the crisis, get all the information together, public communication can be challenging. I have gotten at least one update out to all the supervisors, all the department heads, and then a third group that I have of community leaders and media, which is about 100 people. That happens at least once a day, and everybody's been great in terms of disseminating that information out on their channels to make sure that people know what they need to know. Social media is an area where the county, and we've discussed this leading up to, it's really a coincidence that we were discussing a public affairs position, and this proves that is a sore spot where we're lacking ability here at the county. That position is still on the compensation schedule amendment resolution. I would beg you all to allow that to remain on there and to approve it. Chairman Simpson, of personnel, Supervisor Seaver, Supervisor Driscoll, Supervisor McGowan, and Supervisor Garrity have all agreed to, this goes back to the committee meeting, all agreed to be part of a group to help me hire this individual. We're going to meet immediately after this board meeting to put our heads together and do what we need to do to get somebody into this position as soon as we possibly can. Thank you to them for their willingness to help us out. We will emerge stronger after all of this in terms of knowing what our vulnerabilities are and doing something to address them, such as hiring a public information person for the county.
And I'd also like to thank our chairman. Our chairman he's been in the office with me most of the hours that I've been in the office trying to react in real time and make decisions. He has remained up to speed with all of the executive orders, all of the changes in state law, all of his authority under state law and under these executive orders to do what needs to be done to protect our public. And he's not only remained on top of that, but he has exercised that authority to do what needs to be done when it needs to be done. And I'm very pleased that he's in the position and that he's responded as he has to this. Thank you, Frank. It's been a pleasure working with you on this response. That concludes my report.
Report from the county attorney.
I have nothing. I think it's appropriate right now. Thank you.
Next, we have reading of communications.
National Grid Semi-Annual PCB Inventory Report. And we have 2 letters from Fitzgerald Morris Baker on behalf of the City of Glens Falls IDA, both regarding transfers of property subject to pilot agreements in the City of Glens Falls.
Thank you. Reading of resolutions.
Resolution numbers 92 through 140 were distributed to the members of the Board of Supervisors and posted to the Warren County website on March 12th. None of those resolutions were amended after mailing. Resolution numbers 141 through 145 were produced after mailing pursuant to actions taken by the Environmental Concerns and Real Property Tax Services and Legislative and Rules Committees at their meetings held on March 17th. A motion is needed to waive the rules of the board requiring that resolutions be provided to the members of the Board of Supervisors on the Tuesday prior to the regular board meeting and to bring those resolutions to the floor.
Moved by Supervisor Diamond. Seconded by Supervisor Stroud. I'll call the question. All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Okay. The resolution waiving the rules of the board is now resolution number 141, and then 142, 3, 4, and 5 are those resolutions I just mentioned. Let's see. There are 2 floor resolutions to be considered. Both of those were outlined by Ryan. Floor resolution number 1 is advanced by Director of Mental Health with permission from the Health Services Committee Chair, Supervisor McDevitt, to call upon members of the New York State Senate and Assembly to reject the governor's 2021 executive budget proposal to shift 100% of the cost of competency restoration services to counties. A motion is needed to waive the rules of the board requiring that resolutions be provided to the members of the Board of Supervisors on the Tuesday prior to the board meeting and to bring floor resolution number 1 to the floor.
Moved by Supervisor Stroud, seconded by Supervisor Driscoll. Did you say something?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Shouldn't we all be unmuted and be able to say aye or nay? We're all muted. Okay, now I see the mic is I am. So Mr. Conover, okay. It looks like we are now loud. Thank you.
Okay. Call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Okay, so the resolution waiving the rules of the board will be number 146. Floor resolution number 1 is now number 147. There is the floor resolution number 2, which was advanced by the Director of Health Services to amend the county budget to appropriate funds related to the COVID-19 outbreak. Motion is also needed to waive the rules and bring that to the floor.
Moved by Supervisor Merlino, seconded by Supervisor Bramer. I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Opposed?
Okay. The resolution waiving the rules is now 148, and the resolution, floor resolution number 2 is 149. Resolution number 103 is going to need to be withdrawn. That's with the resolution rejecting the bids for professional auctioneer broker services, and resolution 142 replaces that that's to award to the brass. I make the motion to withdraw.
Motion to withdraw resolution 103, moved by Supervisor Bramer. Do we have a second? Seconded by Supervisor Diamond. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Supervisor Wild.
Supervisor Wild.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman. Actually, all I see on my screen is the sign that says Peter McDivitt. With all of us being unmuted, there's a high likelihood that there's going to get some feedback from this, and we're not going to be able to hear what's going on. So I think we need to do something about acknowledging our approval or not for specific resolutions by either raising our hand on this software package or by raising our hand like this. But with all of us being unmuted, it doesn't work. So my suggestion is to try to keep us unmuted unless we have something specific we'd like to say.
Yeah. A thumbs up or raise your hand.
And we want to unmute Supervisor McDevitt to, when this happens, just to make sure we know where he's at.
Okay, go ahead and say that again.
Supervisor McGowan, do you have a question?
Yes, if we all can follow along and pay attention. It's easy just to mute and unmute yourself when you want to jump in. So we just got to stay focused on what we're doing. I think this is going very well, and thank you all.
So we're going to raise our hand to indicate yes. Is that what we're doing?
How about a thumbs up, and if you have a question, raise your hand.
Okay, the last thing on the reading of resolutions is the amendment to resolution 129, which Ryan mentioned. That's amending the table of organization. He is requesting to remove the planning lines to create senior planner, delete assistant county planner number 2. If you're in favor of amending that, we'll need a motion to amend resolution 129.
Okay, moved by Supervisor Wild, seconded by Supervisor Simpson. Any discussion? Yes, Supervisor Bramer.
Thank you. This was a position, this adding a position in the county planning department is something that I had worked on last year to make sure that we could work on master planning and working on our infrastructure projects. So I know that there was discussion about the title and stuff, so I'm a little disappointed that we're removing it, but I understand the need to make sure that we're not spending money that we may not have in 2020. So in that vein, I really do think that we need to get more information out to the public. I really think that the supervisors, it would be great if we had some more of the information prior to decisions being made, prior to that information going out to the press. And we need clear information about what we are able to tell the public and give them as much information as we possibly can about what the county is doing. There are some things, Ryan, that we're getting in emails from you, which is awesome. You're giving us a lot of communication every day, the updates with each of those items, but it would be really helpful to me to know exactly what we are able to put out to the public. And the public wants to know what they should be doing and how they can help. So that information about what Office of the Aging needs, where the public can, provide additional things like toilet paper. I know people have been hoarding it and they don't really need to. The information that we're seeing from around the world is that our food supply chains are not getting disrupted. Everything is going to be fine. So if you have extra supplies and can donate them, it would be great to have a centralized place in the county for us to do that. I guess my point here is, do we also need to eliminate the public information person as we are getting rid of this other county planning person?
Yeah, Brad McGowan and, yeah, looking at Brad McGowan.
Supervisor Hogan?
I understand the sentiment behind eliminating the planning position. I certainly support holding off on hiring that person, but I'm not at all sure we need to throw it out right away. I would like to ask, was planning consulted on this decision?
Yes.
They were. And they're in agreement that this is the right move at this time?
That's correct. They wouldn't put this person in the office right now because it's not an essential service.
Is it possible to go ahead with creating this position and just putting a hold on the hiring? Where I'm coming from is I feel like planning is going to be incredibly important in recovery, and we're going to need all hands on deck to make that department as strong as possible.
Sure, yeah. We don't have to fill positions. That's why we do have that vacancy fill process, and that could be a stopgap if the board feels that we should still go ahead with this creation and deletion. I don't see why that wouldn't accomplish the same purpose.
Supervisor McGowan? I'm sorry.
Would we just leave the resolution as is?
You would just vote against the amendment.
Got it. Thank you.
Mr. McGowan?
I didn't have my hand raised.
Okay.
He still has his hand raised from before. So we have.
That was from before. All right, I'll lower my hand. Sorry.
Now we have Supervisor Warren. This one. I think there we go. Supervisor Wild.
Are we good?
Yes.
Not, yes? I guess that in response to Supervisor Hogan's statement and Supervisor Braver's statement, it's not my intent to allow this to go on any longer than we need to. The infrastructure plan is extremely important to us going forward. This is just a temporary delay. Whatever way we want to do this, but the recommendation of our administrator was to go ahead and remove this from the list of resolutions for today. So I prefer that we just follow that recommendation. But again, I won't let this slide. It's important for all of you to vote, and yeah, my commitment to make that happen as soon as it's appropriate.
No other hand raised.
Supervisor Seaver?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would support creating this position and leaving it vacant and unfilled at this time. I think that it would be short-sighted of the board not to look at the incredible challenges we have in front of us, and to that sentiment, also still continue with our public relations position, recognizing that down the road this could be something we could fill for our planning department. But it takes a lot to get us to the board and have these resolutions in front of us. Of course, we're doing a great job here today remotely, but I do think that by leaving that specific planning position, perhaps it's unfilled, as our county administrator had said, the planning department would not have an intention of filling it right now, but we do have that stopgap measure. And, you know, from that perspective, I would be very supportive of doing that.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else for discussion on amending resolution 129 and removing the senior planner position? We have a motion and a second. If there's no further discussion, I think I'll ask the clerk to put up the roll call.
Okay, this is on a vote to amend resolution 129 to remove the planning position. Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Ms. Seaver?
Just for a point of order, if I vote yes, I'm voting to remove it. If I vote no, I'm voting to keep it as an unfilled or whatever at this time, correct? Then I vote no.
Mr. Beatty? There is a yes.
That's the best way.
Ms. Shepler?
Yes.
Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Mr. Conover? Mr. Conover? Oh.
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
No.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bramer?
No.
Mr. Bruno? Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Ms. Hogan?
No.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Stroud?
Yes.
Mr. Wild?
Yes.
Chairman Thomas?
Yes.
Motion passes by a vote of 731 in favor. So resolution 129 is amended to remove the planning position.
Okay. Discussion, we could have public comment. We will have, I think, soon, but discussion on proposed resolutions. Yes, Supervisor Diamond.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to have a roll call vote on Resolution 106.
We're having some problems here, so if you could speak close to your mics.
A roll call vote on Resolution 106.
Yes.
Yes, Supervisor Braver.
I'd like a roll call on 128, please.
That's a roll call vote on Resolution 128. Supervisor Seaver.
Thank you. Just briefly, for purposes of our public that are tuning in, when we have our supervisors on Zoom putting a thumbs up or a thumbs down, if we could just acknowledge how they're voting if they aren't taking it off, just so that our public's aware. But also, as it relates, I'd like a roll call on, well, let me back up. We just asked for a roll call on 128. And I just want to state, is now the time for discussion on that?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I just want to state regarding that, Jean, while I applaud your efforts, I think that we do already have an advisory board that is set up under our local law and our Schedule A regarding occupancy tax. And I know they haven't been meeting. I don't know if this is something that can be combined in that advisory group for tourism, or if your intention is to have something completely separate, but because I just don't feel like I have enough information on that, I'll be abstaining on that vote, with all due respect. And I would also like to call for a roll call vote on roll call or resolution 100. That is, I appreciate the county attorney's efforts to provide us with all contracts that we're voting on ahead of time for review. But it's my understanding that we have not been able to complete and disseminate a contract for resolution number 100 regarding accepting and authorizing agreement with Invasive Solutions Dive Company. And again, it would be something that I'm just planning on abstaining on for the lack of information. I just haven't seen a contract. And I really do support all of the requests that have been, I know it's not the fault of the county attorney's office, they were looking for additional information to complete it. But I do believe we should be getting those contracts out for review prior to voting on anything. So I appreciate Mary's efforts in that part. That's all, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, we have a roll call vote on Resolution 100. Is there any other discussion on Resolution 128? Yes, Supervisor Dunn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had the privilege to be at that committee meeting, but I was surprised when Supervisor Merlino had mentioned that he was creating this committee. There wasn't really any discussions, and it wasn't on the agenda at that point in time. I was one of those that moved it to the full board. Reasons being that I wanted some more time to have dialogue in regards to what we're trying to achieve. We currently have 17 standing committees. We have 2 special committees. We have an airport advisory committee, and we're looking at creating a steering committee or advisory committee in the tourism department. And I wasn't aware of the occupancy tax committee meeting. That puts us at about 21 to 22 committees. I have some real concerns about how this committee was initiated, what the requirements were. I'm not going to ask Mr. Molino today, but I'd like to ask the board to send it back to the committee so we can have that discussion. I was taken by surprise because it wasn't on the agenda, and I'd like to talk a little bit more in detail about the purpose of the committee, how we're going to measure the performance. If we adopt this committee today, what's going to happen if we discover that the committee hasn't been successful? They tried this previously 7 years ago, and in Mr. Molino's opinion, it wasn't very successful. So I really don't want to go down that road again. So if the committee chooses to move forward with this appointment today, I will be voting against it.
Further discussion on 128?
I have 2 hands up, but I don't know what they are. So it was Supervisor McGowan, sir.
Okay. Supervisor McGowan?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I hate to bring up this sort of subject again of the payroll project, but Supervisor Bramer did send out a resolution.
Excuse me.
And I am really baffled at the sense that you can't get to an agreement in committee on, see?
How do we get a hold of him?
Someone unmuted me.
I did.
Brad. Supervisor McGowan. We're discussing resolution 128. We'll get to the other.
It's unmuting me. All right. Let me know when I can talk.
That's me. I take full responsibility. You're all welcome.
We're on discussion of resolution 128.
Okay, I have 3 people that I think want to say yes to something.
Okay,
Andrea?
Supervisor Hogan.
Thank you, Chair. I support public participation in all of our processes, and I support Mr. Molino and his intent in bringing these new members into the committee process. I do have, and I have expressed to Mr. Molino some concerns about the constitution of the group he's chosen. I don't feel that it is fair representation from a widespread swath of the county.
We have Supervisor Lyle.
Supervisor Weil?
Mr. Hogan? You guys hear me?
Yep.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, thank you for some feedback. And I'm sure we'll get through this technology piece here before too long. Us old guys sometimes have a hard time with it. But I do support the intent, but I also agree strongly with Supervisor Hogan that we haven't had a chance to really talk about this, and the individuals that are on there. I happen to, I believe, walk in kind of late to this discussion, and I really feel that it's appropriate that we have the big picture view of where this is going, as Supervisor Diamond mentioned. And I think my suggestion would be that if there's agreement, I think we should probably table this and send it back, but I'm not going to take it back quite far yet. So thank you. This is other supervisor's turn.
Supervisor Conover, I think, was next.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, just point of order. If that was a motion to table by Supervisor Diamond and there's a second to that motion, all discussion ceases and we vote on the the motion to table. So I would say that, I guess my question is for Jack. Jack, was that a motion to table?
No, what I did was I wanted to put that out for discussion to see how the rest of the supervisors felt, but I also wanted to share with you my thoughts if it was to move.
I'm not hearing anything. Is Jack hearing my question?
Yes, I am. I can hear you very well, Supervisor Conover.
I thought what I heard from Jack, Supervisor Diamond, was a motion to table.
No, what I did was I put the topic out to my colleagues, the rest of the supervisors, to have that discussion, and if it came to the point where it became the supervisors wanted to table that, I certainly would support that. So if you would like, I will put a motion forward to table Resolution 128, to send it back to committee so we can have a thorough discussion on expectations of the committee, how the people are going to be appointed to the committee, and how we're going to measure their performances.
Mr. Chairman, I'll second that motion.
Okay. There's been a motion to table Resolution 128 and a second by Supervisor Conover. I think we should probably do a roll call vote. Please.
Okay, we're voting on the motion to table Resolution 128, establishing tourism advisory group and appointing members. Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Ms. Seaver?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty? Mr. Beatty is voting yes. Ms. Shepler?
Yes.
Mr. Garrity?
No.
Mr. Conover?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
No.
Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
No.
Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Bruno? Mr. Bruno is voting yes. Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
No.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Ms. Hogan?
Yes.
Mr. Merlino?
No.
Mr. Stroud?
No.
Mr. Wild?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
No.
The motion to table passes by a vote of 618 in favor. So resolution number 128 is tabled and will be sent back to committee.
Okay. That ends the discussion on Resolution 128. Was there any discussion on Resolution 100, Supervisor Seaver?
Not any more than I've already conveyed, just again, looking for that.
Would anyone else like to comment on that? Okay. Yes. Supervisor Leggett.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Yeah, okay. I'll keep talking. On number 100, this is something that went out to bid. It involves the towns of Horicon and Chester. It's through the county planning here as well. We followed all the steps. It's a fairly simple contract for doing what I want to call it, mitigation, Eurasian milfoil mitigation on the lake. I really hope that this does not slow down the process of being able to get this vetted vendor to be able to mobilize and do the necessary work this summer.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Resolution 100. Okay. Yes, Supervisor Simpson.
I just want to say, I also, I didn't know what the issue was with it, but I looked back at my emails and for some reason, it was sent out to the Warren County Board of Supervisors, but I didn't get a copy, so I didn't even know that there was an issue with contact for this guy.
So first of all, I apologize. It's the only contract I wasn't able to finish before the board meeting. And it's just because I needed more information on how it was set up, who was paying who. And so I apologize for that. I got the rest of them done. But I did send out all of the contracts except for this contract, I think Monday, and some of your emails kicked them back to me because it was too large. I then cut the email in half and still kicked some of them back to me. But at that point, we were working on this whole artist response, so I didn't have a chance to send them a third time, so I apologize.
Oh, that's okay. I just wanted it. From what I understand, the town of Work and the town of Chester are paying this contract. So I just want everybody to be clear, there is no expense to Warren County at all. Maybe all this time.
Thank you. Supervisor Garrett.
You both support it?
Yes.
Okay, good enough.
Supervisor Wild has his hand up.
Okay, Supervisor Wild.
For delaying the contract, to have a chance to review this in more detail. I myself personally feel it's something we should be moving forward with, but I would like to understand if there's any consequences of delaying this by 1 month.
Yes, Supervisor Simpson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. These guys book up. There is a shortage of milfoil harvesters. Everybody is booked up. They count on these contracts. We lose them, we won't be harvesting, and there could be, a year without harvesting on some of our lakes.
Supervisor Leggett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is also in partnership with the town of Scranton, Essex County, and they've approved this remediation effort as well. This is a partially grant-funded program. This is one aspect of it. There are town shares to it. If the county can give surety to small businesses in the Adirondacks that they might have, business coming this summer, it could also be helpful.
Thank you. Any other comments or discussion about Resolution 100? Okay, I'll close the discussion on Resolution 100. And further discussion on resolutions.
Supervisor McGowan.
Supervisor McGowan.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I started before. Supervisor Raymer, once again, sent out another resolution there for 106 to really get some people in there to look. And, I have viewed the building. I see the cost of bringing in the building. I have listened to Supervisor Stroud of the concerns of the ground. And I go right back to the concerns that, it's going to cost the county a lot more money once the building is down because there's not much you're going to be able to do with that foundation. And so once you put a shovel in there, that's going to bring back in the DEC. So I have been, lobbying to at least get the opportunity to get someone in there to see if we have an investor who would like to make the investment of bringing that property up. For whatever reason. And I think some of the major concerns that we have here that I have heard is basically getting the right person to be able to follow through with this project. And so, I put a call into Mary, but our attorney to see, how we can move forward with, with the RFP where we have it out there that, the financial qualifications are there, some form of bonding to make sure that this work is going to be done. All I'm asking for is an opportunity to see if there is someone interested that and we can follow through with all this. And in the resolution, it's not stopping anything because we have until June 19th to have something in place. And if not, we move forward with the demolition. So I'm just asking, why we just can't have the opportunity to get someone in there to look. At the committee, we've had, 5 people that are interested. And I understand this has been a long time, but I just think we owe it to our taxpayers to see if we can't keep this on the tax roll and move forward, at least putting an RFP out there with the stipulations of the terms that we need to get this done and done quickly. Thank you.
Okay, Supervisor Diamond on Resolution 106.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In front of you today is an amendment to the resolution which basically speaks to delaying the demolition for 3 months until June 19th, 2020. This board has been notified by several people that they're interested in the acquisition of the Mullen property for 275 Bay. We all agree that the building is an eyesore, there's no question. The question is, can the building be rehabilitated or should the building be demolished? In order to make that determination, I think one thing we need in place is we need a structural engineer report. I'm not an engineer, I'm not a structural engineer. I couldn't tell you whether the building needs to be torn down. But on the other hand, it's going to cost the county somewhere roughly a minimum $70,000 of demolition there. We have an opportunity here by delaying the demolition with this amendment until June 19th to see if in fact there are individuals out there that want to purchase the property and do a rehabilitation. That to me makes sense. We're not taking the property off the tax rolls and we're saving the county $70,000. So I think this is a very fair compromise that Supervisor Bramer has put forward for this committee to discuss and approve. What's 3 more months? We've been dealing with the eyesore at Mullen, from Mullen's property at 275 for multiple years. In the city of Glens Falls, we dealt with Mullen's eyesore on Cooper Street for many years until he took the liberty to demolition the property one night and the buildings were leveled. The county hasn't had that position, but this amendment offers a compromise. People may not come forward, but I think we have to give them an opportunity to do so in order to save us approximately $70,000. So I would encourage the board or make a motion forward to approve this amendment to the resolution and see where it ends up. If there's a timeline scheduled to it, and if nobody bids it, the building comes down. No questions asked.
We have a motion to amend Resolution 106. Do I have a second? Doug?
Bradley Brown would like to speak to that.
Second by Supervisor Beatty. Correct?
Yeah.
I just want to second it.
I just have a technical question, I'm sorry. Just in terms of the process that we're envisioning using for this notice to proceed to be issued, what's the authorization for that notice to proceed? Is it a board meeting? Is it a resolution from the Board of Super? It's just how do we want to pull that trigger? Who has the authority to do that?
I'll defer that to Claudia. She's the one who drafted the resolution.
Supervisor Bramer.
Thank you. Well, I got that idea from our superintendent of public works. He said that a notice to proceed would have to be issued before the demolition actually began. So I'm picturing that would have to be a board of supervisors decision, assuming that we can't get the building sold prior to the deadline here in the amended resolution. unless we wanted to put that designation on to someone else. Perhaps the chairman. I think that would probably be sufficient if we didn't have any bidders, any appropriate bidders by that time, then we would authorize the chairman to issue the notice to proceed.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Further discussion on the proposed amendment to 106. Supervisor Conover?
First let me ask a question, because it was garbled early on. Have we waived rules? Is this now before us, this amendment?
You don't have to.
Right, you don't have to waive the rules for an amendment.
Okay.
We're amending resolution 106.
My problem with this is, and always has been, that the proponents of this have not introduced any type of metrics that or standards that make me comfortable with accepting a title to contaminated property and then in a willy-nilly way selling it for some nominal amount to some perhaps unsuspecting bidder so that we can avoid some type of demolition. The kind of serious approach that I would be interested in would have been that we would require that whoever bid on this, first of all, have experience with these types of environmental issues and has experience in remediating these types of environmental issues. In addition, the kind of discussion that would be serious would be that anybody that would bid on this would require to provide personal guarantees and a non-refundable surety performance bond that in fact they're going to do this as we hope that they will. Because in a very real way, what we're doing is we are delegating our responsibility to protect the public health to some unyet specified public individual. So the way I have to read this right now is that why I have to vote no on this amendment is because there has been no information, no standards established for how we're going to proceed. And right now, my only reading of this is that somebody's going to come along, going to offer us a few $1,000s for this building, and then we wash our hands of it. The problem is now we're part of the title trail. Now we're part of any injury that's associated with this on down the road, and I just can't sign on to that. So that's where I am on this. And until I start hearing that kind of thing, one other thing, as far as the people that are saying, oh no, the property's clean or whatever, there's nothing that I have heard in terms of environmental investigation that tells me whether this property is the source of the contamination or whether the plume moves from some other site onto this site or whether the underground plume moves into those wetlands and is contaminating the groundwater streams or brooks. And until I see that kind of investigation, until I see at that level of seriousness, I have to just not consider this a serious matter relative to this amendment. And so I'm going to be voting no on the amendment for all of those reasons. Thank you.
Thank you.
Supervisor Beatty is next.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Number one priority, the way I see everything, is we always have to go to the full length to keep something on the private tax roll. I think government owns too much now. For less government owning parking lots, buildings, and so forth. It makes sense in some cases, I get it. But in this case, we've had it in that repair for 20 years. Why waiting 3 months? Why not wait 3 more months? And let me just say this, with the economy the way it is, this company that bid the $70,000, I strongly believe they're not going anywhere. If we delayed this 6 months, they'd still be there. If we delayed it 9 months, they'd still be there. They're going to be begging for the business. So let's just do everything we can to give every opportunity we can so let the private sector have a shot at this. I know I received 2 phone calls after the Post-Star article from people saying, hey, I said, why didn't you step up before? They said, well, we just didn't see it. We noticed the Post-Star article. So I'm going to be in favor of this amendment. There's no harm at all, at delaying, demolishing this building. Not at all. So, I don't see why anybody would be against that, if we can keep it in the private sector hands. And yeah, there'll be some issues. We all agree on that. There'll be some issues. But the bottom line is, let's extend every courtesy and every favor we can to see it stay in the private sector so that the taxpayers aren't funding another building, another demolition of it. Who knows, a parking lot, which is, I know Supervisor Stroud wants it into a bike parking lot. There's one a half a mile down the road. That makes absolutely zero sense. I go by that parking lot almost every day, and there's one car, maybe two cars. It holds 50. So why do we need another one a half a mile down the road? It doesn't make sense. So let's do the right thing for once. Let's use some common sense. Let's give every opportunity to the private sector to see if there is an interest in buying. So I will support this amendment 100%. Thank you.
Supervisor Leggett is next.
Supervisor Leggett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This has been to committee on several occasions back to us. We tabled it last time, it went back to committee and it came back in its same presence. I really am a believer of the committee system, and if there were objections to it at that time, then we would not have it before us today. Also, I respect, I'll call it home rule. This property is in the town of Queensbury, and the supervisor of the town of Queensbury is advocating for the passage of the resolution that was presented before us originally. So in those respects, I'm going to stick with the resolution as written and not for the amendment.
Thank you. Supervisor Seaver.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to highlight that I've had an opportunity to speak with our town councilman, George Barone, who has not conveyed the same information that's been conveyed here today in terms of the Queensbury Town Board's position on this. I furthermore want to state that here at the county, we are all at-large and ward and town supervisors. Half of your board is made up in such a fashion. So not only am I a member of the public, but I represent our Queensbury taxpayers as well. And I know I've heard from multiple people, and they echo the support of Supervisor Merlino's compromise the other day in committee. So I have had a chance to talk with people. I don't think it's fair for any representative to say that we represent every single viewpoint in our towns or in our municipalities. We do the best we can to reach out, to provide communication, and to let the public participate. I will be supporting the amendment that is in front of us today. And I also want, if it's in front of us, and I also want to highlight that what we do in committee is not based on a weighted vote. So when we come to a full board meeting, that is our opportunity to truly represent each single voter. If we are going to block or discourage resolutions to coming to a full board, that's certainly a concern that I think not only we should be aware of, but our public should be. Thank you.
And Supervisor Wild.
Supervisor Stroud.
Thank you, yes. This discussion could go on and on, and it has. I mean, that building has sat there for 20 years. No one has shown interest in it. No one wants to show interest in it. We had asked Baird if they were interested, and they said no, given the contamination of the soil, given the asbestos, given the lead paint. No. If we took it down, that takes away a lot of what has been in the way of making this market. So I know that some people try and say, well, John Stroud wants, a parking lot for the bike trail. Well, that would be nice. But this could become marketable once this building's down, and maybe BD might be interested in it. Maybe others might be interested in it. Nobody's going to be interested in it as long as this building's up. I've been working since 2014 to try and get this building down. We're finally there. We've got a bid to do it that is way below what we thought it would cost. We've got the money allocated to do this. Please, let's do this. And Councilman, my town board is in favor of doing this.
You know, thank you.
Supervisor Wild.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And as many individuals on this board know, I was in support and I kind of championed the sale of our recycling building. So I totally understand what is being presented here as part of an amendment. But I have to take another look at this also. That property was very different from this one. This property, I've looked at it a number of times. It has, I don't believe, any commercial potential because of how small it is. There's no parking. Couldn't put apartments there. The only thing you might be able to put there is something like maybe an ice cream shop to support the bike trail, but we already have something like that not far away as it is. So I just can't imagine what this would be used for from a commercial standpoint. And actually, we have someone here, I think, on our planning board in the town of Queensbury. If I could implore Supervisor McGowan to kind of talk about the restrictions that are on this property. But based on my opinion, I'm going to not support the resolution because I don't believe the bidders truly have an understanding of the costs it may take to remediate this and the risk that they have going forward along those lines. So even though I believe we should get rid of our property and allow the private sector to get involved, I think this is somewhat different from what we did down at the Civic Ivy plant. And we need to think about what the potential use might be and whether it's even feasible. So I have to go with the town of Queensbury, Supervisor Stroud, as well as his board, and vote against the amendment. Thank you.
Are there any other supervisors that haven't spoke that would like to speak? Supervisor Merlino.
Can we get on with the vote? I got 5 more minutes of my time. I have an appointment at 1 o'clock.
Okay. I'll let Mr. Diamond speak.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To Mr. Conover's point, he has some concerns about who's going to bid on it, whether they have the ability to do the project. All of those questions could be answered in a form of an RFP. We could require them to build, to put up a performance bond. We could require them to show they have the finances to do the project. We could also ask them that want to bid on it to see a conceptual plan. We could also ask them to develop a timeline for development. All of those things that some of my colleagues here have concerns about, whether the individual is capable of doing it or not, can be included in a request for proposal. So I'd like to add that if in fact some of the colleagues, my supervisors here, have some questions. I have questions on whether who can do the project, but without inquiring and putting an RFP out, we won't have those answers. Thank you.
The county administrator has
Can
a.
you click something on your laptop, because we're now looking at your screen, right?
Well, then I have the floor for just a minute then, and I'll then figure out. This is an aerial view from Google Maps of the building we're talking about, just to give you an idea of what the condition of it may be. That's the roof. You can also see where it is shoehorned in on this area to go with Supervisor Wild's assessment of its future uses. So that's just a visual for the board. I will now figure out how to undo it. There.
That was helpful.
Okay. Supervisor McGowan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Supervisor Connor, you brought up some good points, and I want to thank you, Supervisor Simon, for really clarifying that. And this is all we're asking, and what I see, once we tear down that building to a slab, okay, which a lot of people at the time, and I know the town board, some of the town board members didn't know that the slab was going to be staying there. And once it gets down to a slab, what do you do with it then? So from then, a shovel has to go in. Shovel goes in, that's when DEC comes back in. Because right now, yes, there are contaminants there, but there's not enough unless we disturb it. And that's why I'm saying that if we can keep the building intact and we could get someone that is qualified to follow through and keep that on the tax roll. That's all I'm asking. And if we don't have it, let's narrow it down and we'll make it the county's responsibility. Thank you.
Okay, Supervisor Beatty and then Supervisor Wild.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't want to belabor the point, but, you know, sometimes some of the supervisors seem to get more credibility or weight to a town supervisor. Last I knew, my 85 weighted votes were the same as Mr. Strauss. He's the town supervisor, but I also represent the whole town of Queensbury, as well as Ms. Seaver, as well as Mr. Wild, Mr. McGowan. So I do get a little offended when we say, well, the town supervisor. Well, we're all supervisors from the town of Queensbury. So let's get that straight. That's number one. Number two is, how anybody tell me the harm in delaying this? Anybody tell me a reason or a fact that will harm this amendment, harm the town, harm the county by delaying this? And I don't think anybody can. I know they can't. So this guy who wants to demolish it and said, hey, I give you a certain time frame, that it can spend all avenues to see if we can sell it. If we can't find the guy demolishes it, we go to the next step. But we waited 20 years. What's 3 more months for crying out loud? It's ridiculous. So that's what I have to say. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Supervisor Wild.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, I was not paying attention. I left my hand raised.
Okay. Unless there's someone new that would like to speak to it, I'm going to allow Supervisor Stroud to speak, and we'll probably get to a vote.
All right, thank you. The lot is a triangular lot. It doesn't meet today's standard. If you put in setbacks, this is what it looks like. The current building, yes, the setbacks are in red. The lot line is in white. It's a triangular lot. It's a difficult lot to deal with. You put in, and this doesn't include permeability requirements. It's a commercial light industrial zone. A lot of uses wouldn't be allowed here. So you have this building that has asbestos, that has lead paint, you have soils that are acknowledged are contaminated. Let's start addressing the problems and not delaying any further, please.
Okay, I think we've gone around the horn. I think unless, somebody's got some really relevant new information.
Supervisor Connor goes next.
And I'm gonna want to go too.
I'm going to cut off discussion here. This has been in front of the committee 2 or 3 times. It's been tabled. There's a written amendment in front of us. So the vote is to vote up or down on the amendment to Resolution 106. And we should. And we'll have a roll call vote. As soon as Supervisor Merlino.
He's in the powder room.
It's in the powder room. Okay.
Probably tell him hurry up.
I can't hear anything.
We're not saying anything.
Those speakers on the trail. Those are not even plugged in.
Okay. We'll do it.
It's the speakers up above.
So
figure out how we can use it.
Hey, this is a roll call vote on the amendment to Resolution 106. Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Ms. Seaver?
I'm sorry, this is yes to accept
amend.
that amendment, yes, thank you.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Ms. Shepherd?
No.
Mr. Garrity?
No.
Mr. Conover? Mr. Conover?
No.
Thank you. Mr. Leggett?
No.
Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
No.
Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Bruno? Mr. Bruno says yes. Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
No.
Mr. Simpson?
No.
Ms. Hogan?
Yes.
Mr. Dickinson's not here. Mr. Merlino?
No.
Mr. Stroud?
No.
Mr. Weil?
No.
Mr. Thomas?
No.
The motion for the amendment fails. There were only 458 votes in favor. So the resolution 106 will remain as it is.
Okay, further discussion on resolutions.
Chairman, I didn't hear that. Was that, did it pass or fail?
It failed. Any other resolutions? Okay, we'll proceed to vote on the remaining resolutions.
Are you ready, Tammy? Yeah, you just need to roll call just like you did before. Okay, this is a vote on resolution number 92, amending Warren County budget for 2020. Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Ms. Seaver?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Ms. Shepler?
Yes.
Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Mr. Conover?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
I'm sorry.
Resolution number 92, amending Warren County budget.
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Bruno? Mr. Bruno gives a thumbs up. Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Ms. Hogan?
Yes.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Stroud?
Yeah.
Mr. Weil?
Yes.
Chairman Thomas?
Yes.
Resolution 100, accepting proposal and authorizing agreement with Invasive Solutions Dive Company. Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Ms. Seaver?
I don't know if I can say anything at this point. I know I probably can't. It's just as a matter of looking for contracts. I'm not opposed to the purpose behind this. Because I didn't have the information, that is why I asked for a roll call. I have it in my hands right now, but at this point, I think it's just safe to abstain. Thank you.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Ms. Shepler?
Yes.
Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Mr. Conover?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Bruno? Mr. Bruno is a yes. Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Ms. Hogan?
Yes.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Stroud?
Yes.
Mr. Weil? Mr. Weil?
Yes.
Chairman Thomas?
Yes.
Resolution 106, awarding bid and authorizing agreement with Bronze Contracting. This is for demolition of the Bay Road property. Mr. McGowan?
I'm gonna vote no. We didn't go with the amendment.
Ms. Seaver?
I'm so sorry. I'm trying so hard to keep up with the public participation and have everything time out. And I was not paying attention. 106, I'm a no on. Sorry. Thank you, Supervisor.
Mr. Beatty?
No.
Ms. Shepler?
Yes.
Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Mr. Conover?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
No.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bramer?
No.
Mr. Bruno?
No.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Ms. Hogan?
Yes.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Stroud?
Yes.
Mr. Wild?
Yes.
Chairman Thomas?
Yes.
That resolution passes by a vote of 567 in favor. Resolution 129, that's amending the table of organization and Warren County salary and compensation plan. And that's as amended to remove the planning line. Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Ms. Seaver?
No.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Ms. Shuffler?
Yes.
Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Mr. Conover?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
No.
Mr. McDevitt? Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Thank you. Ms. Bramer?
No.
Mr. Bruno?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Ms. Hogan?
Yes.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Stroud?
Yes.
Mr. Wild?
Yes.
Chairman Thomas?
Yes.
That vote passes. Resolution 135, authorizing appropriation of funds from the vehicle reserve. Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Ms. Seaver?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Ms. Shuffler?
Yes.
Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Mr. Conover?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bramer?
No.
Mr. Bruno?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Ms. Hogan?
Yes.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Stroud?
Yes.
Mr. Wild?
Sorry, yes, and actually, if I could, Mr. Beatty, Supervisor Beatty, could you wait your line, because I'm getting a bunch of feedback, and what I can see is you're the only one that's not muted. We're just catching up with this technology. Thank you.
Chairman Thomas?
Yes.
That passes. Resolution 136, amending Resolution 186 of 2016 to amend the unassigned fund balance policy. Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Ms. Seaver?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Ms. Shuffler?
Yes.
Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Mr. Conover?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Bruno?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Ms. Hogan? That's a yes. Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Stroud?
Yes.
Mr. Wild?
Yes.
And Chairman Thomas?
Yes.
That passes. Resolution 138, authorizing appropriation of funds from the computer reserve. Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Ms. Seaver?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Ms. Shuffler?
Yes.
Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Mr. Conover?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Bruno?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Ms. Hogan?
Yes.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Stroud?
Yes.
Mr. Wild?
Yes.
Chairman Thomas?
Yes.
That resolution passes. Resolution 145 is altering standing rule of the board as adopted by resolution number 1 of 2020 to change the time and date of the October 2020 Board of Supervisors meeting. Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Ms. Seaver?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Ms. Shuffler?
Yes.
Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Mr. Conover?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett,
Yes.
Mr. Diamond,
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt,
Yes.
Ms. Bramer,
Yes.
Mr. Bruno,
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll,
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier,
Yes.
Mr. Simpson,
Yes.
Ms. Hogan,
Yes.
Mr. Merlino,
Yes.
Mr. Stroud,
Yes.
Mr. Wild,
Yes.
Chairman Thomas.
Yes.
That resolution passes. And resolution 149, amending Warren County budget for 2020 for the Health Services Division. Mr. McGowan,
Yes.
Ms. Seaver,
Yes.
Mr. Beatty,
Yes.
Ms. Shuckler,
Yes.
Mr. Garrity,
Yes.
Mr. Conover,
Yes.
Mr. Leggett,
Yes.
Mr. Diamond,
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt,
Yes.
Ms. Bramer,
With thanks to the state, yes.
Mr. Bruno,
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll,
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier,
Yes.
Mr. Simpson,
Yes.
Ms. Hogan,
Yes.
Mr. Merlino,
Yes.
Mr. Stroud,
Yes.
Mr. Wild,
Yes.
Chairman Thomas.
Yes.
That resolution passes as well. Just need a corrective on the rest.
A vote on the remaining resolutions. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Next, we have privilege of the floor, and we'll continue with announcements, and I'll recognize the county administrator.
I forgot one important thank you during my report, and that's Mike Morris. He's our region's new representative on the second floor in the governor's office. He has been phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. He's as busy as anybody, and he is always right back to you and always calling in every day to ask if we need anything. I just can't say enough about him. That's a great appointment by the governor.
Supervisor Lee.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have as some of us might have got the news flash, it's down to 100%. People, nobody's going to work from here. Where does that leave EMS? That's the question.
We need to see the text of the executive order in order to see exactly what it means.
Okay.
This says businesses.
100% on the businesses, or?
I just read the headline and flashed across while we were here in meetings, so I do not, again, have the details.
Okay.
So.
100% of the businesses are to be shut down, non-essential businesses.
So EMS is not technically essential like garbage. Yeah, officially speaking. So where does that put our EMS squads and their staff?
They're essential.
They're essential, too.
Thank you.
Supervisor Conover.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to say, Brian, I'm not sure everyone fully understands. I think they understand that you're the county administrator, but I don't think they fully understand that you're the spokesperson, designated spokesperson of a multidisciplinary team in the event of an emergency. And I just want to put that out for everybody to understand that. Now, with that being said, I certainly don't have any problem, Ryan, if you choose to want to or feel at this time you have the time to or need to activate the Facebook site as part of your communication responsibilities, the governmental site. I certainly don't have any problem with that. But there's going to have to be some process here where, for example, if a supervisor feels there's something that needs to be on the site, there's going to have to be some sort of process where that supervisor can submit that to the appropriate person, and then it can be juried, and then it can come to you, and then you can have the final say as to whether it's accurate or not accurate, because in the end, you're the one that's responsible for the accuracy of information in a very fast-paced, very fast-changing situation. So, just so you know, my feeling on the matter relative to our Facebook site, which is a governmental site, let me say that again, a governmental site, whether you choose to want to activate that, as far as I'm concerned, at some level, that's up to you. If you feel you have the resources and the time and can easily integrate that into your process, fine. But if not, this may not be the time to want to do that. You may want to wait till after you have that public information officer. But in any event, I'll leave it totally up to you as far as I'm concerned. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Seaver.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to clarify for one moment, for those of us that may not be as familiar with social media, that what Supervisor Bramer attempted to do last night was for the benefit of public participation, which could not be done using YouTube live streaming or the Zoom that we have now. So we followed the lead from Albany County legislatures, where they have their own separate legislative page. Any member of this Board of Supervisors is welcome to be an administrator on that Board of Supervisors page. The hope was, as soon as this PR person was brought on board and approved today, that Warren County would establish a Facebook page that would provide official communication out to our entire public. And it is our hope that that will continue to be done, because that, of course, is a big method of how people get their information, but not to substitute for websites or mails or other ways that we continue to notify public of what is going on. I just want to make sure that's completely clarified. Today, we were able to get public participation. We have about 5 questions from members of the public, which I sent over to Amanda Allen. I don't know how the chairman chooses to recognize that. They were copied and pasted identically and not modified to allow that public participation. But again, this Supervisor Conover is not a government Facebook page. It is clearly a collective group of co-workers that are trying to provide information. You are welcome to join it or not. But I look forward to the Warren County official mode of communication, which of course we've been asking for a long time. I think we're there. I really, really applaud all the efforts, but I remember Supervisor Leggett 6 years ago, almost 7 years ago now, saying, along with many others at a NISAC training, that this was needed. So we're doing the best we can today to get the information out, but I do think that's a point of clarification that needs to be made.
Thank you.
Sure, I'll give my take on it. Thank you.
Hello? Hello? I think we're. Hi, this is Taylor P.
Sorry. Thank you to the board for creating the position. It is badly needed. Probably should have been done earlier, but we did it now. We have it today. We have, again, those supervisors I mentioned to come into my office, please, as soon as we adjourn. This is one of the reasons why when I put the position out there to the Personnel Committee, my initial thought was to have it not just have access all through me, but for this position to have access to all the supervisors as well. I think that particularly in a time like this, you're all just as valid as I am in terms of communicating with somebody who is going to maintain an official county presence on social media. And that person is a professional who will work, with me and with whoever to sort it out. And that person, the idea would be for that person to be fly on the wall in any important meetings that we're having, so that they understand the context of decisions, so that they understand what it is that we want to speak about publicly and what we don't. And that's why I very much would like to have direct access from all the supervisors to this person when we hire this person. And the ideal candidate for this position would be somebody who you already work with and know and are comfortable with and have a trustful relationship with. And so that's what I really hope to get out of the meeting that we will have with my working group after this board meeting. And I hope we'll have a name out there as soon as possible. We made the position effective for Monday. In a perfect world, we have somebody in it on Monday morning.
Mr. Beatty, he left. Mr. Wild, Supervisor Wild.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I see Supervisor Conover waving his hand also, but I won't defer to him quite yet. But I did want to mention something that came across my desk, and it has to do with stress and anxiety on the times that we have today. People are working from home. People are in close quarters with each other. Their children are not in school. And I bring back a story about when I was doing a conference call many years ago, and my kids were really young. And most of the times they were pretty good about keeping away and letting me do my business, but other times they would just jump on my shoulders, kind of like what Jimmy Fallon did the other day. It's stressful going through what we're going through today. And all I want to do is bring up something that I found from SUNY New Paltz. And it's titled COVID-19, Managing Stress in This Anxious Time. It's only 2 pages long, or 3 possibly, but it talks about, I think, what we're all dealing with. It's a very stressful time. It has some coping mechanisms. And if that's not part of what you think you need to do, just make sure you reach out, stay close with family, stay close with friends. It's important because no matter how we look at it, these are going to be stressful and difficult times for the next few weeks. Thank you. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Supervisor Brammer.
Thanks so much. As an elected official, we are responsible to all of our constituents. And I know I am getting lots of questions from the public. I mean, Supervisor Garrity said to me the other day, nobody's coming into town hall asking him about stuff, but people are definitely asking me about food, what's happening with food for our students, our elderly, and we are taking care of that. It's going out through the school districts. Office for the Aging is continuing the Meals on Wheels program. There are supplies available out there. We're working on getting more hand sanitizers. People want to know what the do's and don'ts are, and so it's really important, I think, for all of us supervisors to get the word out to our constituents. And for those of you who aren't on social media, this is an important way that people in our communities get information. So this is just another way for us to do that, and certainly the public affairs officer can start a Warren County page as well, like Supervisor Sieber said, and we'll have even more information out to the public through our official pages. Thank you.
Supervisor Conover.
I know it's been a long meeting, but first, Ryan, that was an excellent response to my question to you regarding communication, and hopefully everybody will heed that, what you had to say. Mr. Chairman, this is directed to you as anyone. I've noticed of late that people have been privately filming or videoing committee meetings, this meeting, all kinds of meetings. And I suppose they assume because there's no regulation that therefore it's permitted. And one could also assume that in the absence of regulation, it's not permitted. So I would ask you, if you would, please, in your due course, to come to some conclusion as to whether private videoing of our meetings by individuals is permitted. And we may want to look to other governmental entities. Now, we have our public videoing of our meetings. We have other types of my point is, I think there's going to need to be some rules to the road here. We can't be having 6 or 7 supervisors running around meetings videoing each other, because there might be supervisors who may not want to be videoed, quite frankly. So my point is, going forward, I think we need to look at that. I think that some of the supervisors are correct. It's come of age. I think we're going to need some rules. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll take that under advisement.
I was going to give my advice unless you don't want me to.
Sure, no, absolutely.
My thought on it is we're in a public meeting, and the media can't be here because they're not allowed in the building. And if it's a public meeting, if live streaming it is helpful to make it more of a public meeting, I certainly don't have an issue with live streaming any public meeting.
Mr. Beatty.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was just going to say that, Mr. Moore. It's a public meeting. We're all about transparency, and I find it actually a little bit, I'm confused that Mr. Conover would want to have rules on whether people could actually, the public could see what's going on in our meetings and so forth. So it's public. Everyone and anyone should have total access at all times. That's how I perceive it. So thank you, Mr. Moore. You said what I was going to say. Thanks.
Mr. Conover.
I certainly have no problem with live streaming of our meetings if there are procedures established for that. I certainly don't have any problem with that. You're going to have to answer the question on our committee meetings as well, because those are being privately videoed as well. If you want to live stream our committee meetings, well then we can do that as well. My question had to do with private videoing at our meetings. I think other governmental entities have addressed this question in terms of their policies. That's all I'm saying. Nobody's against denying public access to information. I'm all for it. What we're talking about is what are the rules of the road going forward. That's all. Thank you.
Well, this is a very unusual time. It's something that I don't think any of us have experienced. I think our goal is to have public participation, interaction with the board during the meeting. We're not there with the technology, but you know, that's a possibility, and so I'll leave it at that. So I mean, if people want to stream the meetings to their Facebook page or whatever, at this point, I don't think that's a problem.
Mr. Boyle. Mr. Chairman, thank you. I agree about the fact that these have to be open meetings, but what I would like is an official stream so that things aren't modified, edited, and some of our comments can't be taken out of context without being able to go back to an official stream and say this is exactly what we said. Not that I'm going to get this voted, but I think that we should probably make sure that we have an official stream for this if we can make that happen. So much. Thank you.
Well, I believe this meeting is being recorded through Zoom, and I believe also our own technology is recorded. So, and we are live streaming right now to YouTube. Yes, Rosie Sheever.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am so appreciative of all of those efforts. My only comment would be that a live stream on YouTube and the licensing we have right now with Zoom is not allowing public participation. So we are just trying to band together, not as political entities, but as members of this board, to provide that opportunity to our public in a time of crisis to answer their concerns. To that point, we do have public participation on the agenda, recognizing our offices are closed to the public to physically be here. I have verbatim copied the questions that have come out of the live feed and would certainly appreciate an opportunity to have those comments read into the record and answered to the best of our abilities here today. I've provided them, again, copied verbatim over to Amanda as our clerk of the board, and wondered if that's something we could do briefly to address public concern.
Sure, you know, it's been a lengthy meeting, but yes, sure, we can answer to you.
I appreciate that, Mr. Chairman.
Just start at the top.
Okay. The first one says now would be a good time to report on testing data. It is understood there's a national shortage. How do we compare?
I don't know, because I don't know any other municipalities testing data.
It looks like the second one is, says,
Do we know, I'm sorry, Chairman, do we know for our county how we're doing? Does Janelle know?
I'll let Janelle speak to it, but one of the issues we have with reporting the number of tests that are pending is we don't always know that test is pending, because the practitioner can order the tests on their own.
Looks like the second one.
So Ryan is correct in the sense that we don't know how many tests are being done locally. The hospital, Glens Falls Hospital, is the only one providing the testing right now in our community, but they're also doing it for Essex County, Hamilton County, Saratoga County, Northern Saratoga County, the ones around us and kind of north. So yes, we know they're doing about 70 to 100 tests a day through their tent, and we know that they're doing about 30 inpatient a day, but we don't know how many of those are our residents because we don't have control over who's getting tested.
it looks like there's a comment here, It says perhaps links to agencies could go on our website so individuals can reach out on how to help reduce redundancy. There's also a question about what is the situation with ventilators?
I wanted to say the name of the person. They're aware that their names are public for public comment.
Okay. It's a little, the first one says MS Hayes. That was the one that I read about the national shortage. There's one from Darlene Giblin Hayes. That was about asking to put the links on. And then Pamela DeGroff is asking a question about the situation with ventilators. Do you have any information on ventilators?
The only thing I know is what I saw in the news, and that was that two of the auto manufacturers are going to start producing ventilators. I'm not sure what ones, but that's to the final.
Pamela DeGroff has another question. It says, what can you do if you think you have it, I'm assuming the coronavirus, and your doctor is no longer working?
People that feel that they have coronavirus and their doctor's no longer working, there's urgent cares that they can reach out to. They can reach out to our office. We can try to help hook them up with somebody.
I would recommend if they call their insurance company and see if they have a telemed option. We've offered telemedicine to all of the individuals that are covered under our insurance, not just for if they have coronavirus symptoms, but if they have a sniffle or if they have, whatever the case may be, so they don't have to go in and sit in the waiting room to get checked out.
Okay. This one looks like it's just a comment from Kelly Borgos Hatton. She wants to add that SUNY Adirondack is doing a tremendous job of getting courses online, educational assistance, advising for summer and fall to maintain consistency, etc. Thank you to all. We will get through all of this. Students are all getting remote training as we speak. We should be right on track. Next one.
Just to interrupt you for a second. To go back to what the county administrator just mentioned, I did run across the, I don't know if it's an email or something, but doctorsondemand.com is also for telemedicine. You have to go on and create a profile, provide your insurance card information if you have it, and now I'm not sure you need that now, and you download the app.
The next question I see on here is from Melody from A Lasting Impression Florist. It says, you're doing good things. Question, and hoping you can direct me where to check. So they are still allowing funeral with restrictions. I was told a florist support group that I can transfer my business phone and take funeral orders and go in myself and design and deliver. Wondering if this is true or I keep my business functioning, limiting hours, just me only, store closed. She's looking for information on that.
Yeah, that's probably the best bet is to reach out to an association or a business directly. We're still trying to get a handle on what the latest executive orders mean.
Yeah.
I'd just like to go back to the previous question about the person that thought that they might have coronavirus and what to do without a doctor. The hospital does have a tent, so somebody could drive up there without a provider, get a screening, and be tested if necessary. That's probably better than going to urgent care, unless they need management of their disease.
Thank you.
I have one more, it looks like a comment from Clyde Moore. He wants everyone to support their local restaurants, grab food to go and take it out.
Thank you, Clyde. Mr. Weil.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to respond to the prior question, not this last one, but the one before about whether businesses are determined to be essential or not. And I believe I saw something on an email that said Empire State Development was answering those questions. I'm not sure, but I can work on finding out. So if this person wants to reach out to me, they can find me on email on the county website, and I'll try to get them that information.
Yes, I was on a conference call with the governor's office yesterday, and you are correct. They are the ones that will make the determination as to what businesses are essential and what are not, and there are waivers that are available.
So again, that is the New York State Empire State Development Organization. Is there a website we know, or just look it up and they can find it? Is that correct?
Yeah, right. Right.
You can Google NYS EDC or ESD.
Supervisor Driscoll.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've been contacted by a couple of constituents, and maybe someone could answer this question. They've heard rumors that both the federal and or New York State governments are going to be withholding federal and state tax returns. Some of those families every year kind of depend on those monies to develop their monthly budgets. I didn't have an answer for them. I don't know if anyone here has heard those rumors.
I know if you had a federal return, they've already started paying the federal return. The state hasn't. But I know the federal government has already sent some refunds. I haven't heard anything different. New York State hasn't. They're kind of slow at getting you money.
But if you filed it at the beginning of, we'll say, March.
March? I'm talking about people filed in February and already got back.
Okay, all right.
Money.
Those that are due that money, they hadn't received it, and I've heard the rumors that it was going to be held up.
I haven't heard any facts on that.
Okay.
Anyone else? Yes.
I'm sorry, we're into announcements now? Is that what we're doing?
Yeah,
Well, quickly, if I could just have an announcement, but
sure, go ahead.
it's a positive thing. We had a trivia night scheduled for tonight for SUNY Adirondack. It's obviously closed. I want to thank those board members that signed up for it. In light of that, every time we do this, I try to purchase hats for our team personally, not with taxpayer money. But on behalf of the Board of Supervisors, what I wanted to do though is at least use these and pass them on both to Ryan Moore and to Janelle as just to say thanks, because I know this is a tough time and we're all doing the best we can, but I'd like to see these go to good use. Maybe it's just this long time.
Thank you.
But certainly, thank you. And I can't sanitize my hands before the first time, and you can spray that. And they're brand new, no more.
And our team declared victory.
The other team forfeited the battlefield.
Anything else from anyone? I'd like to thank everyone for their patience. I think this went relatively well. And motion to adjourn. Moved by Supervisor Garrity, seconded by Supervisor Simpson. All in favor? Aye. Opposed?